Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku had Denki's quirk part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story, soulhime from AO3. So let's start the video. Denki inhales sharply before releasing a potent shock under his skin. Glowing arcs of electricity unload in a flash in his vision. For a moment, he sees nothing but white as the currents rush hungrily through his nerves and the objects around him, a static taste of the binary layer world hidden below the metal and aluminium. Beneath his feet, rapid glitches of energy power the cables and computers. Out of experience, he guesses that the force is sufficient to charge numerous phones and laptops, or accidentally stir light bulbs that were peacefully sleeping. His phone vibrates urgently, delaying. The screen lights up as an avalanche of gray text boxes cascade downward one after another. "Thanks for charging my phone, and I'm going to destroy you. I was sleeping, or 𝗬𝗧𝗪𝗧 why now? I was in the middle of a race." The rest are veiled by the lack of space on the lock screen, but they're of the same fashion. Ouch. Denki sags into the chair and tries to breathe through his mouth. A whimper curls at the base of his throat and dies. The sound falls into the pit of his stomach, sitting there heavily, a plump hunk of rancor and affliction. The currents travel under his skin, racing his bloodstream. A breath in, a breath out. Zap. Numbness. All of the bothersome perceptions dissolve into a hollow feeling, or rather, lack of a feeling. Which is better, he supposes. A clear mind, empty of redundant thoughts, is better than the plethora of emotions he experiences daily. Blocking it helps him to focus on his tasks, such as cramming the night before a nasty math test. A sense of metal wraps his bones and presses on them. The low waves of vexation he was fighting with the whole evening, together with the hole pressing his stomach to his spine for not eating anything, are replaced by restive comfort. Clenching his pen, like the last thread of the slipping reality, he stares at a vacant in space before another shock stirs his neurons. He jerks. Finally, Denki looks down at the notebook, teeth catching his sore lower lip. Something isn't right. The answer in the book is different. The angle is supposed to be 67.29 degrees, but he gets 35.74. Then 109.42, which is worse. Maybe he is supposed to use tangent instead of cosine? Shit. Perhaps the 𝐒𝐻 is not 10.31 centimeters after all? Fuck. He scratches the paper, messy blue lines from the ball tip, and suddenly it tears when he pulls too hard. Bitter taste of rotten lemon fills Denki's mouth as he rips off the page and aggressively chucks it into the trash can. Only then he realizes that the previous task is on the other side of the paper. If he hadn't blocked out human emotions, he would have probably started crying. It proves that he's too dumb for this school, too dumb to save lives, too dumb to do anything. He's just too dumb. Mindlessly, he grabs the water bottle filled to 1/4 and chugs it whole. The cool liquid seeps down his throat, a pillar of fire, and he should feel comfort, but he doesn't. He feels nothing. The book is wide open and mockingly calls his name to get back to studying. The pen is begging to be used, and the numbers laugh at his misery. Defeated, he grabs the ruler to guide his shaking hand as it scribbles the geometrical shape again, nosediving into work. This is going to be a long night. There's no sensation in his fingertips, Denki realizes after handing the test to ectoplasm. Halting his stuff packing, he gazes down in puzzlement and presses 5 fingers to the other 5. The weight of skin-to-skin contact is there but featherlight, as if his neurons successively fossilize. Rubbing his numb fingertips against each other feels like through layers of embossed paper. Even when he digs the ball of an ink pen into the pad of his thumb, no pain blooms alongside a blue blotch spreading on his skin. Swallowing down a lump of nerves, Denki's right eye twitches. Resonance of panic starts burbling in his navel. The ground seems to momentarily disappear from under his feet as the room tilts on its axis. Denki has to thump the sharp edges of his hips against the hard rim of the table to maintain balance as fear rakes sharp fangs over his scalp. He should say something, but his feet are rooted into the tile, imbricating the classroom's flooring as black blotches the periphery of his vision. But then, an unintentional current jabs him head to toe. Instant tranquility drizzles into the rigid muscles clenching under his skin, and Denki automatically releases the lungful of condensed air stored in his tight chest. His chest burns as oxygen filters down the length of his throat, lacing with a familiar undertone of mint, 𝗲𝗄𝐻, and his skunky deodorant again. Denki should remind him to stop using it when neither the windows or door are open. Stepping out of the classroom, he ignores the wary look ectoplasms briefly sends his way. He's not the last one to finish the test. Mina, Ijiru, Izuku, 𝗵𝗃𝗃, and Toru are still planted into their seats with the cogs of their brains working overtime. They always stay until the last second, and perhaps if he was intellectually gifted, he would have utilized the 3.5 hours they're given better, like Izuku. But after 2 hours, even if he didn't finish the test, he can't bring himself to concentrate. The material he's been memorizing for years is shouldered aside by the suddenly enthralling structure of the wall. His singular point of pride is that he never walks out before going over the test 3 times at least. A tedious process ranging from 40 minutes onward, if he can stay focused and doesn't start daydreaming about the possibility of a meteor crashing through the wall. Does 𝐒𝐩𝐼's insurance cover such a possibility? He counts how many blinks it takes before he loses track of what he's reading. This is the kind of stuff you do instead of answering the questions posing like models under your eyes. These questions, you and them, know who is better. It's not you. It's not Denki. The question knows at least one answer. The one specific answers for what is asks. What do you know? What does Denki know? Denki knows that no matter what he does, what kind of a study hack he finds on Instagram or TikTok, nothing helps. Nothing to cure his scores from being lumps of pit tines marked on a wrinkled paper. Do better next time. But next time is like tomorrow, it never comes. The moment he steps out of the sultry room, he takes out his phone and checks for messages. Test forgotten. Dejection pushed down. The extended group chat that contains the Baku squad, Jairu, Yaozu, Ojiro, and Tokoyami is at the top, spammed with 83 new messages. Denki chuckles. The next one is group chat, and then comes the private chats that he's going to give a look at later. Later, that stands for the moment he can force himself into the plastic bubble of happiness he likes more, much more than whatever is this. He isn't sure when this started, but he knows that it ruins his aesthetic and he doesn't like it. That being said, his will to socialize is buried 6 feet under, but he also misses his friends. The last weeks were nerve-wracking, too busy to be considered a piece of a man. No time to hang out. Study, cram, learn. Sleep. Scratch your head at your to-do list. Eat. Study some more. He scolds himself for wanting to be alone and forces his oddly sluggish legs to carry him to the library. He hopes that this odd state wears off before he gets to his destination. The zap from earlier, like all of the previous ones he experienced during the last 3 weeks, erases any threads of emotions from his brain. He can't come to his friends like that. He can't show them that this is how he deals with his dumb, hopeless self. Denki can't let them see him in this shabby state. Slowing down, his eyes wander around the half-empty corridor, an attempt to distract himself from the numbness in his chest. Students from other classes walk out, discussing in low voices the harsh test they just had. It's relieving to overhear that he isn't the only one who is going to fail, albeit some pricks dare to say that the test is alright. Those monsters. He wants to laugh at the thought, but he can't. His face is a stone. Muscles refuse to form a smile, and vocal cords don't cooperate with his brain. His skin itches and a microwave noise buzzes in his ears, not unlike popping electricity from a machine on the fritz. Denki goes for a smile yet fails to even angle his lips upwards. Deep down, he thinks that it should be alarming, but he's calm, unbothered. It dawns on him, painfully slow, that his surroundings mash into a mixture of colors and sluggish figures. The ground once again disappears from under his shoes, but this time it doesn't reappear when he presses down his useless weight of existence to the bottom of his feet. Panic doesn't come rushing with his bloodstream like it usually does. However, his breath quickens as his lungs grow heavy in his tight chest like there's water condensing in them. Denki swallows. At least he thinks he does. Something shaped like a human appears in his eyesight. Hey. Thump. Here am. Denki groans in distress as something buzzes in his ears like the static noise of a radio. No matter how hard he tries, he can't mute the channel. An irritated groan vibrates in his sore throat, and he almost chokes on his own saliva when he tries to swallow phlegm down. "You hear me?" A voice. Is something talking to him? His slow brain flips in his skull, and finally his blurry eyesight stabilizes. The first thing he sees is an arrangement of gray tiles, a familiar ceiling. It takes another moment before it hits him that he's lying in a soft bed, his head sinking into the comforting pillow underneath. A warm blanket envelopes his exhausted, heavy body, and he's almost ready to close his eyes and drift into sleep, when suddenly he fixates on a flying head of an old lady above him. Recovery girl. A very concerned recovery girl. What? The first attempt at speaking disrupts by a wave of throat-burning coughs. Jolting up, he slams his palm on his chest, heaving. Recovery girl pats his back. "Easy there," she murmurs softly, offering him a glass of water. He thanks her shakily. Water grants instant relief, and after making sure nothing is lurking to strangle him again, Denki slumps back on the bed and covers his face with his palms. What happened? The old lady sighs, the most weary sigh the world has heard. You collapsed. Denki's brain falters. I what? You collapsed after taking your math test, got caught by a student in the middle of the corridor, and brought here by him and one of his classmates. She elaborates, and he feels a knot forming in his stomach. Well, that's embarrassing. Totally something an idiot like Denki is capable of. I know you tend to stress out a lot during exams, like most of the students. Are you eating properly? Sleeping enough? Like most of the students. He's not special, he's just the only weakling to collapse because of it. Is that what she implies? Denki's brain feels like cotton, and he drags it back to reality with some difficulty. Am stressed, sure, nothing unusual. It's not a lie if he doesn't know. When he's stressed, he tends to skip meals and forgets to eat until one of his friends yells and shoves food down his throat, like keeping watch over a baby. So he's pretty sure that his squad keeps in check that he eats properly. Sleeping is a whole issue entirely. Recovery girl hums, then skips out of the chair and paces to the table at the side of the room. Were you overusing your quirk lately? Every day? Not really, he lies because it's easier. Explaining to Recovery Girl what he's been committing to in order to concentrate on his studies, to not slack off and keep up with the rest makes it sound like an addiction. He's not addicted, just desperate. It could be drugs, he tells himself. Okay. He hears ruffling and shuffling, wheels wheezing against a tile flooring, and he finally removes his hands from his face to look at the nurse. Take a day off today and rest. Eat. Go to sleep early, take a hot bath. Do you need more rescue? No, I still have half a bottle left. She nods, donning a kind smile on her pleading face. Make sure to eat something sweet right now to uplevel your sugar. She pauses, then shakes her head. And maybe you should thank the nice kids that dragged you here. Denki frowns. And they are? Both kids are from Class 1C gladly. I'm unfamiliar with the other guy, but the one to catch you is Shinso Hitoshi. I assume you're already familiar with each other? His stomach jumps to his throat at the name. Crap. His heart is not beating rapidly against his ribcage. A little odd, but meh. He is tizzy, but not because he's about to express his wholehearted gratitude to one of his many meaningless crushes and offer him something already rejected since yesterday. Fiddling with the hem of his uniform jacket is habitual rather than essential. Throwing a look over his shoulder, he spots 𝐈𝐺𝐻 standing over the corridor, sporting the usual supportive thumb-ups and mouthing, "Good luck, dude." Denki tries to smile, but he's not sure his mouth cooperates. 𝐈𝐺𝐻 doesn't stop beaming, which means his stone-like facial muscles do their job. Instead of figuring out what is wrong with him, because the answer is everything, Denki mentally shakes himself and pushes those thoughts aside as he takes a step closer to the door, reaching out to open it with a surprisingly steady hand. The door is nearly torn off its hinges before he has the chance to touch it, and for a moment his vision blanches like a camera lens immersed in mud. A feeling not unlike a deer caught in the headlights engulfs him upon being revealed wide open in front of a class full of strangers. The difference is that there is no crash, no collision, but an equally confused student from Class 1C that Denki has never seen before. They stare at each other for what feels like a whole minute before he suddenly exclaims, "Hey, it's Shinsu's Sleeping Beauty." Denki chokes on his own saliva. Shinsu's who what now? Wow. He visualizes Shakespeare flipping in his grave. Vocabulary 100. Did you mean Shinsu's Sleeping Beauty? Someone titters from inside the room, and soon enough Denki finds himself under the light spot like a prized iPhone on its launch day. All eyes on him, and he squirms, the familiar circulation of radioactive electricity trickling through his body. Just briefly, but he feels the perplexity knocking on the backside of his mind, as if asking why his quirk activates itself without him giving it the command to, but it is pushed coarsely aside by said energy. Trust me, I know what I'm doing, it says, and suddenly he's calm. Might even say he doesn't give a fuck at the bazillion pairs of eyes digging in his flesh. A heavy gut feeling tells him that he should be concerned, that it is wrong, unnatural. He doesn't dare think sinister. It's a whole new level of self-pity he doesn't entertain. Fact is, he can't be bothered enough. So instead he flashes his brightest smile and laughs with the rest. It's easy. It's natural. Shinso, wake up. Denki glances at the direction of whoever summons the cause of his headache, watching as an indigo tuft of hair rises from the table. Groggy eyes gaze at their direction. A layer of misty sleepiness reflects in them as he tries to blink it away. There is a barely noticeable stream of drool at the side of his mouth that he cleans with a sharp dab of his wrist as a classmate approaches him. The sight does nothing to Denki, which is a good sign, isn't it? The rejection isn't going to be as upsetting as he thought it would be. In fact, he's clean of bubbling emotions while looking at the boy, which is even better. Right. Hitoshi rubs his face as if getting rid of the last threads of the realm of dreamland, and slowly wobbles to his feet. He's towering above Denki, taller than what Denki recalls from the joint training. Or is he? Oh, what does it matter? Not waiting for the invitation no one is going to give him anyway, Denki makes his way toward him, beaming. But it feels wrong and fake, plastic. Yet he doesn't pay attention to those nudging thoughts, especially because they bounce off his brain as fast as they appear. Dude. Hitoshi blinks, pinching his brows, as if he cannot decide whether he's fully awake or if Denki is a nightmare to disappear once the bell tolls. I'm so sorry for falling over you. I didn't charge myself the day before, so oops, I guess. Anyway, as an apology I can treat you to a coffee or something. Pressing his lips tightly to each other, Hitoshi's eyes jerk sideways. He's not upset that Hitoshi rejects him. More correctly, he doesn't care. It flies out of his left ear the moment he exits the class and meets Ijuru in the corridor to proceed onward with their day. Well, almost. Generally, it can be described as a light switch abused by an amused kid that thinks it's funny to flicker on and off the lights. Each few hours a zap abruptly shoots through his nerves and shuts down the system in charge of his emotions and senses, leaving him numb and unfeeling. A doll at the disposal of a cruel manufacturer bearings. Just install the program as you please. Once it happened while he was cutting a tomato. If Ijuru hadn't screamed at the top of his lungs for Hanta, the closest to Denki at the most crucial moment, to snatch the knife out of his hand, his pinky would have been chopped off. The most terrific thing about it is that he wouldn't have even felt it. Now, a plaster wraps his itching pinky, which at least means that his nerves are back to normal. It creeps him out. He still hasn't told anyone because he is not sure how to address such a peculiar phenomenon. Is it a glitch of his quirk? Mayhaps. For a loser like him, it's just to be expected, but it doesn't make it any less embarrassing. Maybe that's why he hasn't told anybody yet. They will laugh, and fairly so. They will mock and point out that he cannot control his own goddamn quirk even after almost a full year at the hero course. You brainless bum. A chunk of bitterness forms in his chest, but he tries to stamp over it. The moment he concentrates on his will to erase the feeling, something crackles in his ears. He strains in his place, as a sudden wave rolls through him. Again, his quirk activates without him commanding it to, and his face pales for a single moment, but then everything falls into harmony. The demons in his brain settle down, leaving him alone, and the blonde nonchalantly leans on his arms. The itch in his pinky is gone. All the threads of worry and insecurity sweep out of his system, leaving a trail of ash and dust. Palms on the table, he pulls his focus back to the whiteboard. If there's a good outcome out of this, well, it's the fact he can actually listen to lectures. When his mind is clear and no thought is flying there to disturb him. It's good, benefiting. Who cares that he's emotionally numb and there's no sensation in his palm? Denki's eyes droop to his hand. The plaster gazes back at him from its respective place around his pinky, and it dawns on him that not only the itching is gone, when he presses his weight on it, he feels nothing. Shit. No matter how hard he sinks his nails into his palm, there's no alert of his brain to halt the offending action. His mind is haggard, blurry, messy, only half-conscious. He tears off the plaster and scratches the fresh cut until it starts bleeding, until his flesh is pink. Yet, nothing happens. There should be a tingle of panic. It should worry him, and he needs to ask 𝐈𝐧𝐿 to visit Recovery Girl to take care of it, but he doesn't. Impulsively, Denki grabs the scissors from his pencil case. Everything feels as if in slow motion, yet swift. Before he knows it, he swings up his arm. Weak light from the window shines through the silver blades of the scissors. Yellow rays kiss it lazily as he throws his arm down, and someone screams his name. A chair abruptly screeches as its legs scrape the floor, but he doesn't heed it. All of his focus is dedicated to the motion. The scissors cut the air in a whistle at the speed of lighting. A puzz. Splash. There's that moment of being aware and unaware of what's happening simultaneously. Like when you're shoved on a stage, unprepared, without even knowing you'd end up performing in front of a crowd of keen people. When you know everyone is around you, watching you, but the lights of the stage darken everything so you see nothing more than rows of black shadows. And you know what? Fuck that moment. Denki's head hurts. Pain propagates in his skull like an inner earthquake. A static taste fills his mouth. It dawns on him, marvelously slow, that someone is touching him. It's a warm hand that traces up and down the length of his arm. Up and down. Gently. Softly. And then an equally soft voice echoes in his ears like the melancholic rustle of the leaves behind the window. Cammy? His throat is so sore that the only thing he manages is a gravel rough hum. Sounds like he's awake. That's not directed at him, is it? If his eyelids didn't weigh tons, he would have opened them, really, but they are sitting on his face like fattened geese. It's about the fucking time. These voices are familiar, yet he's unable to decipher the owners just yet. Perhaps he should sleep some more. No. A snide voice in his head sneers. You've slept more than enough, lazy ass. Get up. After a tough battle against gravity and lethargy, Denki forces up his hefty eyelids, albeit at the speed of a snail. He's lying supine in his bed, wedged into his blanket and sweating like a pig. Also, he stinks. Gross. Denki groans. The room is spinning as he liberates one arm from the blanket and props on his elbow. The room is spinning. He has to close his eyes again. A steady hand grabs his shoulder. Here, I'll help you. Instead of the cool wall he expects to allay the internal heat waves searing beneath his skin, Denki sags into a pillow fort. Only when some of the pounding in his head subsides, Denki masters the ability to take a proper look around his room. Encircled by his friends, he counts 5 distraught faces: Mina, Ijiru, Hanta, Katsuki, and Kyuka. On the bedside table from his right, dutifully pens a plastic tray with a deep ceramic bowl of steaming rice, a cup of green tea, and chocolate chip cookies on a porcelain plate. His body feels oddly heavy, as if his bones are replaced by bricks. And there's an itchy tickling, familiar to rapid knife stabs, in his right palm. Squeezing the bridge of his nose with his left hand, Denki inhales a slow lungful. Hi. Brilliant. Don't give me that shit. Bakugo. Ijiru hisses with a screwed-up nose. Denki flinches as Katsuki meets Ijiru with his mouth a grim line and smoke dangerously curling around fisted hands. Man, how about chill, Denki says faintly, pointing in the vague direction of Katsuki's hands. The last thing he needs is class A packed in his room like frightened sardines when he's in the state of a chewed-out potato chip due to the fire alarm going off. Surprise tosses 2 dark eyebrows high on Ijiru's pleading forehead. What? That. A shaky arm gestures at him and Katsuki as a whole, like it might explain anything. A dry cough rakes his throat and he winces, finally estimating the bone dryness of his throat. Mina yanks him to an upright posture, patting on his chest until the saliva trying to strangle him alive clears out. Untrusting of his voice, Denki nods. Carefully, Mina brings him the cup, and wraps his quivering fingers around the warm surface as its sweet savor tingles his taste buds. It's comforting. Thanks, he whispers into the liquid. What are you doing here? His brick-like tongue twists in his mouth as he tries to talk, but it's not that terrible, he hopes. They exchange glances, 5 other people in Denki's dark room, knowing something that he doesn't. You pretty much stabbed your hand in the middle of the class, dude, 𝗵𝗃 says. Denki's brain functions fritz. Huh? Yep. I noticed that you took scissors and, well, I don't know, I didn't think you'd fucking stab yourself, so I didn't react in time. All of us didn't react in time. I drew amends. Voice ugly with guilt. Denki's organs shrink into ice cubes. It just happens so fast, out of nowhere. Dude, why would you do that? And if he didn't know his friend better, he would have thought that 𝐈𝐺𝐺 is about to bawl his eyes out. Frankly, Denki hasn't caught up with the situation yet, and so far he can gauge 4 things. He's in his bed. His muscles are sore like after hours of intense workout. He's withered like a cactus, and his friends are worried sick because he was, apparently, born a moron. Did he really stab himself in the middle of the class? He's not sure what is more terrible, the fact that he executed it, or that he has no idea why. If that's insufficient to make his skin crawl, he fails to recall the past 24 hours or so. His lungs crunch. Mina works her fingers through his fringe. Shivers rush down his spinal cord, and he melts into the cushions. After stabbing yourself, you blacked out. We brought you to recovery, girl, and she didn't let you out for 2 hours. After that, Aizawa-sensei brought you to the dorms and asked us to keep an eye on you while you were sleeping. And man, I know you can be a heavy sleeper, especially after going to your waist state. 𝗵𝗃 glides his palms down his face, cupping the black mullet to his neck. But dude, 13 hours? In lieu of a response, Denki focuses on the laxity paving its way through his muscles and tells him he should recharge if he wants to wake up before tomorrow at 3 p.m. Yet, he can't bother moving, and when he tries to estimate the effort to drag himself and take the charger, he decides against it. A gurgle from his stomach begs for food, but he dismisses it. It can wait. Everything can wait. Of course. Of fucking course he wakes up smelling like the sewer. Sniffing his armpit results in gagging, and a mental note to kiss every tile his friend's feet land on for bearing his stench. When the final haze of sleep fades with the breeze lingering through the window, he becomes aware of the repetitive twitching of his right arm. Denki lifts his arm slowly, sweat soaking down his face. Each few seconds his fingers twitch, but his attention doesn't last long on them, because he notices a white bandage on his palm. His palm burns. The stab wound must be underneath the white gauze pad. Digging in his mind rewards with nothing concrete but an agitating headache. Not that it is surprising, his brain can never store important and significant thoughts for more than a few minutes. A sudden quiver drags his attention back to the rest of his arm, and he grimaces. This phenomenon harassed him since the manifestation of his quirk, causing an inner earthquake to his limb at relaxation. He thought that he's gotten a hold over it, but apparently everything he thinks is wrong at its core. Arm dropping limply to his thighs, Denki sucks in a lungful, trying to clear mind of the tar and haze. But he can't focus with his arm picking on his nerves. It takes a few compulsive flexes until the shaking ceases. Arrows of pain shoot from his aching palm to his chest, but he ignores it and slowly melts out of the bed. His forehead bumps into the flooring, upper abandon hanging like from a rope and legs still mashed on the bed, tangled in the blanket. Denki groans, placing his left arm at the side of his head and pushes, which results in him transferring into a puddle of misery and weak static electricity next to the partially kicked-off blanket. I need to get up and fucking shower and charge, and get a hold of myself for fuck's sake. Easier said than done, though. Man, his head hurts. When he steps out of the shower, Denki is ready to swallow a horse. It's a feeling as if your head is up in the clouds while your stomach is grumbling in low decibels, so that the human ear cannot hear, but he feels it like waves on a red flag day on the beach. The hunger gnaws his stomach, that is no longer able to support the rest of the digestive system, and his legs suffer the direct impact of the lack of energy. He's pretty sure that if he stops paying attention to the way they are moving, they will bend down under his weight and he will find himself sitting on his butt on the floor until the Lord and Savior decides to kick his ass to the kitchen. Gladly, he makes it in time, and leans against the counter with his gut pressing to his spine in exasperation, demanding energy that the cable he's ravenously sucking on cannot deliver. Food, Denki, you need food to live, remember? But he is lazy. Preparing a notorious meal requires thinking, a thing that he cannot do. Not when his stomach is as flat as a pancake against his spine. Thus, in this utter moment of brilliance, Denki grabs a bowl and fills it with cereal, pours milk and shoves a spoonful into his mouth. The effect is instantaneous. His stomach almost falls on its imaginary knees as if praying for God, and Denki almost slumps onto the floor. Are you having a food orgasm? The voice stirs 𝐒𝐭𝐴𝑚, and he shoots his head back, almost crooking his neck, spotting a familiar black tuft of hair and huge tape elbows. After swallowing, he tugs on a smile that feels a bit forced and a bit plastic, but that it's just because he is tired. Yes, that must be the reason. You don't even know. His voice crops out hoarse, and 𝐬𝐴 snorts. How are you feeling, man? That is a great question. He has no idea how he is feeling, especially because he doesn't really remember what has happened. It's as if someone draws a blank in his mind, not letting him play the events since the moment class started, up until he woke up with the squad assembled in his room. Instead of telling this to his friend, he beams as brightly as he can. Am feeling great. A bit winded, but now I'm gonna charge myself and will be as good as new. It tastes bitter in his mouth as he lies, but he just can't bring himself to confess to 𝐬𝐴. 𝐬𝐴 has more than enough problems to deal with. No need to add 𝐒𝐿𝐴 to the ever-growing list. They are heroes in training. They opt to train and get better, and not slouch on their ass and feel miserable. That is why he forcefully shoves those redundant feelings away, keeping up the facade that everything is great. An electrical current abruptly runs under his skin. Shit. Denki never gave his quirk the command to activate itself. It happens again and again. He's unprepared to deal with it. Shit. Zap. That's good. 𝐬𝐴 pats his back, oblivious to the fact that the cereal is suddenly tasteless in 𝐒𝐿𝐴𝑚's mouth, while reaching out to grab a bowl for himself. Recovery girl wants to see you tomorrow and heal the wound, so make sure to charge completely and stuff. By the way, 𝐈𝐧𝐿 said that if you're still feeling like shit, then you can have a day off tomorrow. But you're going to have to speak with recovery girl cause he side-eyes him cautiously. Usually people don't just stab themselves. Yeah, I have no idea what's up with me, Denki shrugs indifferently, unable to care anymore. He stabbed himself, so what? It's not like it's the first time he's getting injured or does an idiotic act that ends up with him being hurt. People shouldn't worry about it. He's a useless bum anyway. 𝐬𝐴 needs to realize that and leave him alone. Stressing out too much? There's something weird in the way 𝐬𝐴 speaks, as if he wants to say something but holds back. 𝐒𝐿𝐴 chuckles. Probably. Wanna come to my room and chill a bit? Play video games, maybe. Usually Denki agrees without thinking twice, but at the moment he feels too emotionally exhausted from this conversation that he finds himself shaking his head slowly. Sorry bro, I'm really sleepy. You know how I get after overusing my queer? Wait, fuck. Overusing your quirk? 𝐬𝐴 repeats after him. Bewilderment slams against his countenance. When did you? I mean when I'm tired. Tired. Denki cuts him off sharply, ready for the panic to bite at the backside of his head, but it doesn't happen. And once again he thinks that he should be concerned about it, yet he doesn't. Like, when I forget to charge, you know. I'll look at the time, glancing at his phone. Denki turns on the screen. I'ma go to sleep, okay? 𝐬𝐴's teeth sink into his lower lip. Sure. 𝐒𝐿𝐴 smiles at him, fingers curling up into fists and squeezing the skin. Cold sweat trickles down his spine, but he is surprisingly content with what is coming out of his mouth. He salutes playfully at his friend, an automatic response of someone who is used to doing it for a long time, and turns to pace out of the kitchen. His legs are like marshmallows, too close to give out and melt. However, miraculously, he makes it to his room before it happens. The problem is that Denki can be more irresponsible than a 5-year-old. Which can explain a lot of things, really. Why his room is messier than the city after a hurricane, or why he cannot do laundry on time and ends up using the same shirt and pants for 3 weeks, or why he accidentally falls asleep while charging himself and ends up sucking on the cable for 8 hours straight. That is bad. Perhaps not the deadly type of bad, but the holy shit 𝐒𝐿𝐴, can you stop moving for a fucking second? type of bad. The bad that irritates everyone around him bad. His legs can't stop bouncing as he sits down to eat breakfast with the class, and his right arm is shaking when he clenches tightly into the chopsticks. 𝗵𝗃𝗲 scowls at him from the side. Dunce face, the fuck is wrong with you? Stabbing yourself with scissors cuts off your brain completely? Kirishima elbows the ash blonde, receiving a repugnant hiss in return, and sits from 𝗂𝐵𝐺𝐼's other side. Are you okay, man? Yup, just overcharged, snorts the electric user, trying to guide the chopsticks into his mouth. When the piece of omelet slips due to the furious quivering, he tiz, narrowing his eyes. Ugh. Everyone is occasionally glancing at him since the moment he steps into the kitchen. They try not to disturb him too much, keeping it light most of the time, and he is thankful for that. To his dismay, it takes exactly one more quiver of his arm for their eyes to push him to the spotlight like a dog in fashion show. He tries not to flinch. For the first 3 seconds, he tries to ignore it, but then his fingers tick and the chopstick slips out as well, bumping into the plate in a jarring dling. Now the conversions die as well. Do you need help? His arm vibrates in the air, so he pushes it between his thighs, trying to trap it between them and force into stillness. A nervous smile makes its way up his lips as he eyes Midoriya, who is very much openly staring. Hell, already reaching out to grab the chopsticks. I'm cool, dude. I have the left hand. Denki takes the wood sticks with his left fingers twisted awkwardly. It's uncomfortable, and it takes him a few embarrassingly long minutes to adjust, but eventually he thinks that he handled it, forcing all of his attention to the sorry attempts to grab some food from his plate. The fact that everyone in the room follows every breath he intakes causes his feet to turn cold. The hints he gives off are obviously do nothing to his classmates that can't understand that he's fine and doesn't need their fucking help. The spasms in his arm are an old story, and it's true that this is the first time they witness it, but it doesn't mean they need to pity him that badly. A minute passes. They are still staring. Denki swallows a thick chunk of nerves. Guys, he eventually huffs, eyes twitching. I appreciate the concern, but I'm fine. I know that I freaked you out yesterday, but I'm alright, okay? You really have no reason to worry. The silence is heavy, weighing down on the people sitting across the table, and 𝗂𝐵𝐺𝐼 is close to throwing himself out of the window. The nerves begin to surge in his stomach, boiling like water in a kettle, ready to. An unexpected current shoots from his right shoulder, and his arm automatically bounces off from the trap of his thighs beneath the table to bang itself so hard the cutlery clinkles. Denki's hand freezes on the doorknob, fingers curl tightly around the square-shaped, narrow, index finger and a quarter-long object. At least, when his index finger plays the ruler's role. When Mina used her index finger to measure it, they reckoned that it takes Mina's index finger and a half. In Hanta's case, it was approximately a finger and less than a fifth finger, but 𝗧𝗏 sports ridiculously long limbs, so it doesn't count. Funnily enough, despite 𝗓𝗏 being already larger than Denki, because he takes care of himself, eats properly and opts to build a grandiose muscle mass if he wants to put a good use of his quirk, and he does. Still, the red head and the blonde share finger's length. Though Kirishima's palms are bigger than 𝗂𝐵𝐺𝐼's, it looks as if his fingers are longer. 𝗵𝗃𝗲 has palms almost as big as 𝗧𝗏's, but it surprises no one. Maybe it's just 𝗂𝐵𝐺𝐼's twisted brain, but it is logical for a handy quirk user to have rather big palms, isn't it? It's like 𝗧𝗏's elbows. His quirk is concentrated there. Therefore, they are bigger than usual. He knows that this theory lacks a few solid testimonials, but it doesn't mean his brain won't think about it. According to it, he is supposed to have a tremendous nervous system, or ample neurons to carry the electricity in his body, which probably isn't the case, because he's a rather small human being. Not the smallest, but indeed not as big as a hero should be. Even Midoriya is more buffed up than he is. But then again, Midoriya puts a lot of effort into working out, into getting better. The aspiration of the green head is enough to fill 𝗂𝐵𝐺𝐼 up 3 times, and frankly, it can be overwhelming at times. So maybe it is better not to think about it. But if he doesn't daily remind himself that he is a loser, he can get carried away with his wild imagination. For example, how cool his quirk can be. After reading a few articles and talking to the hero he is interning for, 𝗂𝐵𝐺𝐼 reached the conclusion he can be totally overpowered and maybe even stronger than Midoriya. That is, if he stopped being dumb. which is not going to happen anytime soon. You cannot teach an old dog new tricks. Anyway, it is rather speculating about his wasted potential or staring at the wall. Do the math yourself. But why have one when you can have both? Barks out his brain, and he snorts at his own implied bisexual joke. Meaning, if choosing a partner was as easy as staring at the wall, then probably he would have been already in a wholesome, loving relationship. Wait, why is he alright? Recovery girl. Conversation. Scissors. Goddamn brain that cannot focus on one thing at a time. 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲 hopes that someone is going to pay the old lady a hoard of money after this visit is over, because no one should handle 𝐒𝐭𝐴𝐲 for free. No one. Not even his parents. This is why he decided to be a hero, he supposes. To pay off his poor parents that had to suffer through his romping, had to purchase all of the hospital visits, and make sure their kid doesn't accidentally kill himself. Or others around him. How come they haven't kicked him out of the house yet? Well, at least he's no longer entirely their problem. The thought leaves a bad taste in his mouth. Being a dead weight in the over-glorified you isn't condoling either. 𝐒𝐭𝐴𝐲 barely presses the weight of his arm on the door before he hears muffled voices from inside and freezes once again. The results are here. He recognizes this voice, their homeroom teacher, 𝐒𝐽𝐻. Indeed, he learned to tolerate this man to the point standing fearless in front of him after being scolded for 15 minutes straight, but that doesn't mean 𝐒𝐿𝐴𝐲 is mentally prepared to deal with him presently. Yes, recovery girl's voice is a bit clearer, hence she's closer to the door. Surprisingly, they aren't half as bad as I expected. Usually at this time of the year we have a few students suffering from severe stress fractures or other injuries, but it looks like this year, despite having a lot of reckless teens, there won't be a need of hospitalizing anyone. That's good. Indeed, previous years were hell of a ride. She sounds distant, nostalgic, because every day you just talk about students being taken to an emergency room after doing schoolwork. That's 𝐒𝐴 for you. Though some may need medical insurance, such as 𝗵𝗃 from your class. Please bring him for some checkups, just in case. He hadn't broken any bones lately. A soft, repetitive knock. Tuk tuk tuk, echoes from inside. Don't tempt the devil, 𝐒𝐻. And if we're at it, what happened yesterday? Denki's heart palpitates as he inwardly starts to panic, blood turning into ice cubes in his veins. Heat brews in his stomach as he leans forward a bit, easily guessing what she's referring to. The cuts on his twitching arm pump, tiny zaps of tickling pain bounce off his flesh. Shit. That. 𝐒𝐻's voice is on the verge of distraught, and that causes 𝐒𝐿𝐴𝐲's entire existence to shrink, feeling like a tiny shrimp trapped between carnivorous teeth. Well? 𝐒𝐿𝐴𝐲 just stabbed his palm, out of nowhere. Witnesses say he looked in a daze. He also didn't respond to anything we said or did, and as I understood, slept for over 13 hours. A pause. The result? Denki's breath hitches. Nausea greets for a better day, joining the party of his wrecked organs. He tries hard not to retch. Don't throw up in the middle of the fucking corridor. We can't trust the results from over a month ago. You should know that better than anybody here. I'm afraid that we're going to have to do another checkup on him. That is, if my thesis is correct and it is something connected to his quirk. It's known that a quirk strong as his tends to go wild in an unprepared body that's put under constant stress. We just have to act fast before. She trails off. His heart runs over his ribcage like a truck without a driver at 160 kilometers per hour. Before what? Screams his anxious brain, as a pounding sensation works its way through the neurons in his head. It's suddenly hard to breathe. Before? Echoes 𝐒𝐻. I'm not sure, confesses the old lady. However, I don't like it, that I can state for sure. An electrification quirk is as magnificent and powerful as self-destructive. If anything happens to him under my watch, for some reason, a vivid image of frightened, glossy eyes represents clearly in his mind. I would never forgive myself, 𝐒𝐻. You're not the only one. That sentence is more than enough to blow butterflies under the blanket of nausea, like rays of soft light on a gloomy morning of a bleak December. Don't fucking cry, you loser. He's a teacher. That's his responsibility. You're not special. In any case, the casual change in the subject almost hits him at the force of a baseball bat blowing a ball. I need to run this check on Shinso as well. Shinso? Shinso. As for Shinso Hitoshi, that Denki decided to do the trip of shame over. As for Shinso Hitoshi, who's going to transfer in a few weeks. As for the only person in the entire world Kaminari doesn't want to end up wearing solely boxers in a closed room at the audience of an old lady, Shinso? Aizawa huffs in defeat that Kaminari doesn't expect. You had to see his face when I told him about this checkup. The boy was about to throw a bench over my head. What did you tell him about the check? The fact that recovery girl sounds actually concerned is endearing, but Kaminari locks his jaw tightly and swallows down the ugly laugh at the tip of his tongue. Am I supposed to feel offended that you care what I told him rather than my general wellness after almost being hit with a bench? Did Aizawa just make a joke? Denki is ready to die in peace. In any case, I'll inform Kaminari about it today when he comes. Speaking of, he was supposed to be here already. And suddenly it dawns to him that he's eavesdropping, and that it's quite illegal, though he isn't sure there's an actual law against it. Fuck. A strong gut feeling tells him that if Aizawa spots him, then his head is going to join the threatened by a flying bench club. Denki takes a hasty step back, heart in his mouth. Everything blurs for a single moment until a familiar wave of warm electricity chases his cells and curls there, whispering softly, "It's okay, don't panic. I'll shut it off for you here, no fear. No emotion. You're calm." And he actually is. Any threat of anything is erased, non-existent anymore. It clicks in his mind a second later. My quirk was helping me the whole time. The fog dissolves as everything settles into place. Those currents and zaps are an automatic response of his body, his quirk, like the fight or flight instinct but better. It calms him down, soothes redundant emotions, clearing a path for rational thinking and cold judgment. Fuck, I really am dumb, don't I? If he had figured out this helpful trick sooner. The pain is also gone. Even better. Chance his brain. Nothing distracts him anymore. No need for his parents to pay the mountain of money to purchase those damn pills that do shit to help his ADHD. No pain. No panic. Harmony, concentration. He feels fine for the first time since stepping in the UA. He feels that he can compete with the kings of his class. Denki tastes the familiar, electromagnetic taste of electrons in his mouth. A taste of competence? It isn't bad at all, in fact. Quickly, his brain does a spreadsheet of what he's going to do before the effect wears off, and he'll have to figure out how to activate it without panicking like the witless imbecile he is. First of all, he has to survive the dreadful visit at Recovery Girl, just show off that everything is perfect, and then head straight to class. Kaminari takes a deep, confident breath and knocks. When the door creaks open, Aizawa makes sure to give him a long look before nodding and walking down the corridor. Kaminari is almost perturbed by the fact that chills don't run down his spine. This is prodigious. For the first time he sat still for an entire lesson, not fidgeting once, copied the notes and kept track of everything. Hell, he even tried to answer and got it right and was complimented by the teacher. Since when does that happen? He also wasn't scolded at all, which is marvelous for itself. The only thing that nudges is the fact that he feels nothing. No happiness that he did well in class, or that he got praised. But he shoves it aside. It isn't important. Nothing matters when he can finally catch up with the rest. So his friends glance at his direction each few minutes. It's okay. He'll explain later, and they are going to understand and cheer on him. Denki, the class clown, can be on the same level with them after so much time of being no one. Surely they are going to support him. The confidence oozes into his mind, screening the cold hole gaping his chest. Recovery Girl healed his cuts completely and told him about the checkup he's going to retake, oblivious to the fact he eavesdropped. No big deal, though. He just played it off as surprised. Thus he's going to do the checkup again tomorrow at 7 a.m. Quite too early, but alright, he won't argue. After all, everything is good. Prefect. Fucking great. He almost misses the quiver of his arm when he relaxes it. A string of irritation bounces in his mind as he squints at the limb. Son of a bitch, hisses internally, clenching a fist. It helps to soothe the spasm. The bell goes off and the usual A's and O's roll in the classroom as students happily stretch before the next lesson. Kaminari pushes back, throwing his arms at the chair and yawns loudly. Seems like using his quirk frequently tires him up without frying his brain, but it's for a good deed. Bro, Kirishima calls from behind, so 𝐭𝐚𝐲 spins on the blue chair, forcing up his usual smile. I thought you'd take a day off. Good to see you're doing well. Yup, as good as new. They fist bump, beaming at each other. Making a scene makes you smarter? Snorts Jirou, poking his shoulder, probably referencing the correct answer. That sure left an impact on everyone, huh? No one expected the dumb clown to answer something right. Huh. Is it a worry I hear? He robotically teases, dodging the real question behind her remark. Shut up, Jirou grunts. The earphone jack hovers threateningly near his head. You're on thin ice, dude. 𝗧𝗏 snickers into his hand, plopping down on Kirishima's table. What recovery girl said? Not much. Denki shrugs indifferently. I'm going tomorrow to do again this stupid check we had last month, for our quirks and that shit. She suspects it is just some glitch of my quirk, but I don't think there's a real reason to be worried. Bikoku Ishido and Yairozu approach them as well, each one wearing his trademark expression of concern. Yet, he cannot bring himself to understand why they are worried. He's fine. The only thing that is still low-key disturbs is the tics of his right arm that refuse to go down even under the effect of his quirk. Recovery girl said it'll stop eventually. If he stopped it once, he'd do it again, he supposes. Well, Kirishima glances at 𝐭𝐴𝐲's right arm that vibrates in the air, in a semi-relaxed state. What's up with your arm, though? Ugh. He exhales and lifts his arm until the edge of the trembling fingers levels with his gold eyes, grimacing at the recalcitrant limb. It's something that started with the manifestation of my quirk, sort of tics. When I got a better hold of my quirk it stopped, but it looks like my old friend is back. Does it hurt? Momo observes it as if it's a rare artifact in an exhibition, or a bomb in disguise of a shopping bag. He's not sure, but he can confirm that his arm isn't going to explode anytime soon. Not really, Denki says, flexing his palm as to emphasize his point. Just annoying. But it's like that only when I relax it. He then lets go of the hold of his muscles, arm hanging in the air for a few seconds. Like a vehicle from the moment the brakes are released and the clutch is transmitting the torque from the engine to the drivetrain, it takes exactly 2 seconds before it begins to quiver involuntarily. Shit. Kirishima breathes out, dark eyebrows arch on an exposed forehead into a frown. This is really cool but also creepy, not gonna lie. Why has it started now? I mean, you said you've got a hold of it, didn't you? My quirk was kinda glitching for the past 24 hours, if you didn't notice. The deadpan catches him by surprise, because he's 𝐭𝐴𝐲 Denki and sarcasm isn't part of the daily dose of whatever drugs he sniffs before waking up. Or at least that's what Jirou tends to say on days he's acting weirder than usual, a creative way of telling him that he needs to see a therapist. The awkward silence that follows the statement makes him narrow his eyes, and he's a bit confused by the fact that he doesn't feel fazed at the expression Kirishima wears. He can't really describe it frankly, thus he just stares back and cracks a smile. So what did I miss yesterday? It's under his skin. The raging electricity that sets his veins on fire. Like a riot of nerves and rampage of bones that scream instead of his vocal cords. His body is a wreckage of living cells that beg for momentary relief from the galvanic agony. And everything burns, burns, burns. Denki squeezes shut his eyelids, sucks in a tight breath, an involuntary shudder zips down his spine. His muscles tense, nails raking into white-knuckled fists, sweat soaking in his armpits. The familiar crackling pops in his ears as his heart pumps in the veins of his neck. Zap. Hospital again. Dad is keeping his head low again. Mom is spewing threats to contact a lawyer if they don't do their job appropriately again. And Denki is lying half awake in a hospital bed, cold electrodes sinking into the flat surface of his chest and temples, clips biting at his index fingers. He tries inhaling through his nose, but his lungs sting with each expansion and tears swell up in his drab eyes. It hurts. His innards are burning. It hurts. His brain is soggy, a syrup of thoughts too disjointed. It hurts. The room is a carousel. Black dots singe his eyesight. It hurts. A soft clicking of the door moors his mind back to reality with some difficulty. Denki gazes in haze at the man entering the room, a doctor with a white hospital gown and a mask to match. His hair is cut like the grass in the school's playground, but it's red, as if blood. Stained. Hey little one, he says while pulling down the mask, revealing a tender curve of pity. Denki follows the man as he plunks down to sit on the chair usually occupied by one of his parents, and places a white-wrapped elbows on his thigh. "How are you?" "Hurts," is all he manages through a tight throat. "I see." The doctor glances at the permanently beeping machine, displaying a pixelated line that wriggles into a sharp-edged diagram on a rectangular green screen. Despite the exhaustion rubbing off of his body, his curiosity tingles somewhere at the back of his skull, so Denki finds himself staring at it for days without an ounce of understanding what exactly it represents. He knows two things. It's not for normal children, and his parents sport a sickened expression when the doctor explains things referenced here. "You know, you're a strong little guy." The sentence is followed by blue and red cables affixing into the gray machine, and frantic typing on an off-site keyboard. "A little hero," he elucidates. "I admire guys like you. And I believe that one day, you are going to line up with the best heroes of our generation." An odd sensation envelopes Denki's body, like a fog blanket, the pain ceasing gradually. Still, he forces his chapped lips apart to ask faintly, "Really?" The doctor's image grows blurry and unfocused. "Yeah. When I'll be wrinkled and old, I'm going to sit in the living room with my grandchildren and watch the great pro-hero chasing villains with a wide smile on his face. And I'll tell them proudly how the little boy did not surrender until he paved his way to the top." The baritone seeds placidity over the tumultuous buzz in Denki's head, covering him in a lid of sleep. A gentle hand ruffles his hair one last time. "Don't give up, kid. Are you hungry, Den?" 𝗓𝗂𝗵𝗲 𝗔𝐵EAUTIFY isn't trampled when exhaustion is deeped an inch into her skin and a purple bruise unfurls on her cheek. Even when her voice is like a wavering rope bridge and eyes rimmed red, between the humdrum walls and cold flooring, she's like a ray of light Denki can clench to. "Not really. But you haven't eaten since the morning, and your father went to buy some of your favorite muffins. I think it's time to eat something, right?" Denki doesn't look at his mom as she gently caresses his head, distantly gazing from the dirt-stained window frame. Pedestrians amble the streets in their daily routine as a group of people clad in flashy uniforms mad dash across leveled rooftops in pursuit of a silhouette slipping down a chimney. "Pro-heroes," he thinks in a half-daze. "Maybe," Denki whispers ruggedly. Arisu's palm freezes on the vertex of his head like a dead weight, as if she's uncertain what to do, where to lead the limb, how to react to the stiff voice of her typically ebullient boy. In contrast to the rest of the shivering skin, the area turns worn and it's comforting a little. A gentle kiss drops to the side of his forehead, sending a tingling sensation to the tip of his toes. "You're doing well, baby," she coos. He pretends to not notice to trembling edge. So good. They said that they're going to release you in 2 weeks if you keep this up. You have to give the last push now, baby. Okay? Can you promise me?" A soundless explosion hurls a pillar of smoke somewhere in the south. Blaring sirens echo just merely 5 seconds later, like a polished script of an action movie. Bravely, Denki wonders if it's the fleeing villain's last resort, or just a coincidentally parallel fight. Averting his gaze to Arisu, Denki searches a slip of a heroic flair in her posture, but there's not a single inch of her that cracks under the instinct extolled by the media. Like she doesn't see the danger transpiring outdoors. Like she doesn't care. It makes him sick of guilt. A vital source of salvation is stuck supervising her dumbass son that can't fight off the urge to scream that he's fatigued. While all of his friends resent from homework, fill up middle school applications, craft minimal future plans, what place to visit tomorrow or dinner to eat, he watches the doctors and nurses scratch their heads to the question whether Denki's going to see the dawn of tomorrow. His thoughts is a goo of what if and penitence for denying the portents of his body before becoming a human bruise. Wasn't it for his mother returning askant a few minutes earlier that night? Weren't his parents fast enough? He bites down on his lip, mute. His right arm quivers violently. Denki winces, swallowing down a dry ball of saliva stuck at the pit of his throat. It feels as if a knife slides down to his lungs, laughing at his grief. "Mom," he lets out eventually. "What is it?" Tucking the fears and doubts into the darkest corners of his mind, away from anyone's reach, Denki forces a phony smile on his face. "I'll be okay," he whispers, grabbing her hands and squeezing as tightly as he can. Arisu squeezes back, a weary sigh pushing through her lips. "I know. Care, thump thump thump, click. 𝐒𝐩𝐢𝐫, thump thump thump, click. Denki flinches. An annoying itch of pain zaps his quivering arm when a sharp, attenuated needle sags under the external layer of skin. 1, 2, 3, pop. It slides out with the ease of the water stream of an indolent river. Cold liquid attempts to drip down his bare shoulder, but is wiped away in a sharp hand movement. A cloudy cotton is pressed to the thin drip of blood, and he lifts his other arm to take it from the old lady. Out of the peripheral, he spots the photos on the black screen of the detecting apparatus, a hybrid of X-ray and ultrasound, that scans the body trapped beneath the plate to visualize the Quirk system that can be described as a skeleton with occasional IV of veins-like crawling through. "You can go," Recovery Girl announces without even looking at him. "Shinsaku, your turn." Denki doesn't waste a single moment to scramble from under the stinging examination table, shivering from the bite of the breeze lingering through the slanted window frame. "Shit," he hisses, almost tottering over a monochromatic uniform bundle. In prospect, he should have foreseen it and placed the clothes in a safer place. But since when does Denki calculate actions ahead? As his heel wrestles with the hole of his pants, Denki glances rightways at the padding of bare feet against tile flooring, catching his maybe-future classmate's mid-rubbing a nicely shaped bicep with his nose screwed up in agitation. Something tells him it's a bit morally wrong to bore into the muscles whittled into Hitoshi's back as the latter crawls beneath the intimidating plate, and perhaps 2 shirt buttons reveling between his numb fingertips is the punishment he deserves. But Denki can't tear his gaze away. Hitoshi's hair is a messy haircut a smidge shorter than what Denki remembers. A jagged definition starts denoting on his jawline. His arms seem wider than on the joint training, stature more elevated. Hitoshi's barrel-shaped body, skirting the girthy type, is ironically delicate. It makes Denki feel green with jealousy at how Hitoshi managed to bulk up in a time span twice as short as Denki is working out generally. And even when Hitoshi was leaning toward the thinner side, he slayed his own skin. Shaking his head, he averts his eyes forcefully away, an odd feeling taps at his chest. Taking a deep breath, he then grabs his pants and pushes his foot through the hole, wondering how come the room is suddenly sultry. However, as expected, his focus doesn't linger around Shinso for too long. The anxiety from the results is born the second he hears the click of the machine, nibbling at his stomach as if it's a cookie. What if there's a way to discover his trick of blocking out emotions? He doesn't know why, but a gut feeling tells him that Recovery Girl isn't going to like it. But that's only because she doesn't understand. She can't understand the placidity of void. That the numbness helps him more than any pill or whatever medication the doctors ever proposed. The purpose of their oh-so-helpful methods is legally snatching his parents' money, so if he finally found a way to help his sorry ass do better at school without unnecessary expense, no one should stop him. What he's doing is good for him, right? Right. 100% content with his elations, Denki tucks the white shirt of his uniform into his pants, zips them up and buttons. He's ready to take his jacket and ask for permission to get back to class, when suddenly he hears a huff coming out from the old lady's direction. Shinso, she sounds like a kindergarten teacher that has to deal with a kid that doesn't want to eat his meal. "The faster you let me do that, the faster you can go." "I know." "Oh God." Chants Kaminari's brain uncontrollably. His voice. Since the first time he heard him, Kaminari considered Shinsu's voice as, well, the only word coming to his mind is manly. Blame Kirishima for that. Damn. This boy hasn't only buffed up, but his voice has deepened as well. Even if he's jealous, it's none of your business. Kaminari allows himself to glance huskily, spotting Recovery Girl standing on the tall chair near the examination table, with a syringe in her hand. He can't see her face, because she's with her back to him, but somehow only from hearing her voice he can tell she's displeased with whatever the other teen is doing. Well, after visiting her constantly for a year, he can state for sure he mesmerized half of her facial expression. Because that's what his useless brain does in its spare time, instead of repeating what they learned today in class or thinking how to develop his sharpshooting style before the next training session is up. Not anymore, though. The moment he specializes in this self-electrification technique, he won't worry anymore about losing focus or falling behind. By blocking out irrational thinking, Kaminari is certain he's going to reach his maximum potential and finally be the hero he wants to. At least that's the goal. Then please let me do that. Recovery Girl's voice snaps him out of the bubble of thoughts that almost swallows him up. An uneasy shifting follows the beseech, and is Recovery Girl grunting? That's sort of an achievement only Midoriya managed to trigger up until today. Can I have a moment? Kaminari tries to spot Shinso over the machine and the lady, but sees only glimpses of bare skin and indigo bush. The nurse rubs her head with her other hand, glances somewhere over her shoulder, and shoots the guy one single nod. I'll go out for a few minutes. Pull yourself together until then. There's no bite in her voice, but somehow Kaminari can practically feel in his nerves the embarrassed flinch of the other boy. After that, the chair makes a quiet grunt as the lady jumps off of it, walks over the table, grabs something Kaminari doesn't care enough to see, and leaves the room. Heavy silence envelopes the room like fog. That kind of awkward stillness that suffocates the people in the room and makes them regret ever entering it. As if they are in the middle of an elevator ride with the neighbor they just can't stand, and he starts casually talking about the weather, while the only thing they want is to scratch his eyes out. That kind of silence. Kaminari can't handle it well per se, so he clears his throat while pulling on the uniform jacket. Gold eyes watch Shinsu's figure rising into a sitting position on the examination table. "You okay there, man?" The terrified jolt of the other team catches Kaminari by surprise, and he himself strains in place, before his shoulders relax. Violet, sharp daggers clash with his innocent gaze, and Shinso glares at him for a moment or so, before puffing out in irritation. "I thought you already left." "Thanks," answers dumbly. He's almost sure his brain slapped itself. Being an awkward idiot is something that is supposed to happen in front of crushes only, isn't it? As far as he knows, he's done crushing on the sleep-deprived giant since he rejected him. Then why does his intelligence lower to the level of his left shoe? The look Shinso gives him is unreadable, yet Kaminari can easily guess the purple head thinks he's an idiot. Which he is, but it doesn't mean the thought is any less bitter and heavy in his chest. No matter who he speaks to, they think he's dumb. Each word that leaves his mouth probably lowers the other person's IQ. Maybe he should just zip his mouth, never talk to anyone ever again, just disappear from this world. Kaminari levels his eyes with the floor. Lets out Shinso awkwardly, helping the blonde brush away the dark thoughts filling up his mind. What's the deal with this syringe? Shinso rolls his eyes. Never mind. Stupid, brainless piece of useless human being. Even a simple question you can't answer? A lump chokes up at Kaminari's throat, and he hurries to swallow it down, curling his fists. The familiar, welcoming sensation starts to swirl in his stomach, and he takes a few deep breaths, trying to expedite the process. Just one zap. One single bolt that shakes his entire existence, and he will be able to maintain this conversation without disappointing Shinso. Oh, poor Shinso. Instead of talking with the smart kids of 1A, being exposed to the palpable abilities and potential of the future heroes he's going to study with in a few weeks, he faces Kaminari, the idiot of the class. He hopes that Shinsu's brain cells haven't killed themselves yet. Zap. It's just a liquid to deduct your quirk functioning. His mouth suddenly moves on its own, as his tense muscles relax and the depressive thoughts jump out of his ear as if they never existed. It works for a minute. Recovery Girl doesn't give a big dose of it. "Oh," falls out between Shinsu's lips as he skeptically observes the blonde. His expression is still unreadable, but Kaminari doesn't care anymore. He feels good like that. Nothing bothering his restless brain, he easily focuses on his interlocutor, actually functioning like a proper human being for once. "Why are you asking? Teach didn't explain this to you?" There's a hint of red at Shinsu's cheeks as he spins his head to the other side. The movement is so abrupt that Denki worries his neck is going to crack. No one moves for a solid 30 seconds, before something clicks in Denki's mind. "Hey," he tries not to giggle as he takes a tiny step forward. "Are you?" Judging by the boy's reactions, that he doesn't want to answer Denki's inquiry, and how Recovery Girl practically begged him to let her inject the liquid. Afraid of needles? A pause. No answer. "You are." It's not a question anymore. "Shut up," retorts the purple head, tugging at his nape. Kaminari has noticed long ago that it's a nervous tick of the teen, and Denki from a few months ago would have thought that it's cute. Now, He feels nothing as he looks at the squirming Hitoshi, with tints of pink coloring his cheeks. "Want me to hold your hand?" Teases, coming closer and closer. "I will punch you." A counterfeit giggle. The taste of it is bitter, as if he has swallowed tar. Yet his body moves on its own as he sits down near the examination table and holds out his hand. Honestly, Kaminari has no idea what he's going or how he looks like, what kind of expression he wears, or how drugged his eyes seem. The disturbed look Hitoshi probably should have alerted the blonde, but it doesn't. "Can't you just leave me alone?" I mean, Kaminari shrugs. "I offer you sincere mental support, dude." Hitoshi parts his mouth to answer back, but never has the chance to. The door opens and recovery girl walks inside, holding a steaming cup of coffee and a pile of papers pressed to her chest. To the boys' surprise, Aizawa heads inside after her, looking plain bored and tired as he usually does. Kaminari, both of the adults glance at him, though the one who speaks is the old lady. "Why are you still here?" Chokes out the blonde, skipping on his feet. For a moment he feels as if the room sways from side to side. Gladly it ceases as fast as it starts. I thought offering mental support for Shinso, but he doesn't want any, so, I'll head back to class?" "Yes, hurry up," Aizawa nods. Black eyes skim the blonde up and down. Usually, it makes him squirm, but this time, he just smiles apologetically and paces out of the room, feeling a bit lightheaded. It betides out of nowhere. Denki walks down the hall, a towel over his shoulders and nose tucked in his phone. Exhaustion leaks from his frame in long strings, a tension in his muscles begs for a recharge, and the forming headache tells him he should take a nap. Or just go to sleep. Today was harsh enough for him to fall asleep now and wake up tomorrow morning without ado. On the other hand, this time of the evening is his only chance to catch up on the book he reads. The busy schedule lately has prevented him from taking a few hours to himself and just read. All of the constant stress, studying, and, of course, his lovable friends that demand his attention. It's just to be expected, though. The end of the school year is near. Soon, they will turn to 2A and start their second year of high school. It's as terrifying as rousing, if he must be honest. The mere thought of it flips his gut like a pancake on a pan, heating his inner organs and squishing sweat out of his skin. A snort. And I just bathed. That aside, it suddenly strikes him that he has officially survived his first year of high school, without dropping out. Albeit it's too early to say anything for sure. If he fails the tests in 2 weeks, then Aizawa might kick his ass for good. Maybe it's for the better. This way, Shinso is going to have a guaranteed seat in the hero course. After all, they can't have an odd number of students in class, right? That means if Kaminari is out of the picture, Shinso smoothly slides in and takes his place. This way, someone who deserves a seat in the Honorable 1A is going to get it. Fair and square. The fact that Kaminari is in this class since the beginning is the inequitable part. Shinso should have been there, not him. Shinso is smart, hardworking, and confident. He's everything Kaminari isn't. Not just that, he's also the prettiest human being Kaminari has ever seen, and all of those who try to tell him that Shinso's appearance is scary then, well, their opinion is wrong, okay? Kaminari was serious back then, telling Shinso that he has the face of a popular guy that all the ladies are going to like. He's almost envious, almost. Surely the moment Shinso steps into the class, he's going to get himself a girlfriend. Maybe Mina. They can make a cute couple, not that they have ever interacted before. Wait, but what if he's gay? Or bisexual? Or pan or dang? So many options. But obviously, Kaminari forgets about it. He's an idiot. What did you expect? Wow, he wonders, looking at a random dot in space. What if he and Todoroki end up together? Holy shit, what a power couple. Or Shinso and Midoriya. Damn, we're going to be dead. Why is everyone in my class so pretty, strong, and talented? Why am I the only ugly idiot that can't do anything himself? I'm a dead weight, fucking nothing, Arg. A painful pump sears through his nerves and his body falters. The hold on his phone loosens. The device drops to the floor in a loud thud. The corridor spins, walls mixing into waves of tsunami that slam over his face, knocking out air from his lungs and strangling his throat. It's hard to breathe. His legs give out. Black dots jump up his field of vision, arms shaking like leaves in the wind, He tries to get a hold of himself, but everything suddenly feels so far away. Something buzzes in his ears. Electricity crackles, spins and dances around him, a tempting beauty of a hungry beast that wants to destroy. Tears pick at his eyes. Denki tries to scout after the floor, but can't tell whether he's holding it or not. Inhale. Exhale. His breathing is rapid, heart banging against his chest. Panic scoots over his clogged mind and grips into it like an agitated wolf. Zap! Denki slumps on the floor, as if he's a log after a tornado that finally is brought by the wind to a peaceful land, to rest until the day it's rotten. Heartbeat drops. Sweat trickles down his forehead, but at least he can breathe again. What the fuck was that? Something declares that this is not normal, that he needs to take his lazy ass and bolt to Recovery Girl, to tell her everything to the smallest detail and get help. But this part is rather easily shushed by the smudged part of his brain that scatters a delusion of composure. It's okay. You're okay. Denki takes a deep breath, waiting for the world to stop breakdancing around him. The moment he feels content enough to stand up, he places both of his hands at the sides of his body, pushing his upper abdomen up. But then his freezes. Gold eyes gradually round as a certain realization oozes into his skull. His legs refuse to move. Denki swallows down a thick chunk of nerves. It slides down his throat like a bone of a fish that you missed while eating it, scratching the sensitive gullet. The impact of the collision of his chest and the floor isn't fierce, but it feels as if oxygen is knocked out of his lungs like after Kirishima's punch into his stomach. What the hell? Gradually, 𝗂𝐵𝐺 pushes himself to sit. His buttocks plop on the floor and knees push to the sides from the motion, as he glances down at his thighs. A shaky hand rests on his left leg, pressing his 5 fingertips against the strained cloth. He lets them sink in, nails raking the skin, yet feels nothing. A part of him expects for the earlier wave of electricity to kick in, so that he can stay calm while this, whatever this is, happens. But he can practically taste the panic brewing in his guts. The taste of metal and terror, a bitter hybrid resembling a rotten egg wrapped in socks that hasn't seen the washing machine for weeks. A pant. The fuck. A gulp of air, also known as an incredibly sorry attempt to fill up his crunching lungs with much-needed oxygen. What the hell, what the hell, what the hell? A scream is building at the pit of his abruptly tight throat as his breath quickens. Heartbeats increase from a normal rate to 7,000 beats per second. Sweat trickles down his forehead as he slams the first fist against his thigh. It's like fisting with your pillow without any other way to express the frustration that grows inside of your chest like a beanstalk. Tremendous and thick, suffocating. Electricity crackles in his ears, zapping through the bouncing, blonde hairs. Another fist is mercilessly slammed against his other thigh. 𝗂𝐵𝐺 bends over and forces all of his weight, yearning to feel the pain from applying so much pressure against his muscle, but he feels nothing. Something hot forms in his eyes, tugging at both sides. And no, it can't be happening to him. Firstly, he loses sensation in his fingertips. Now his legs are knocked out. Denki tries to breathe through his nose, gulping air at the speed of a train burning fuel. A vexed shriek curls in his mouth, accompanied by the taste of acid. Tears squeeze out of his panic-stricken eyes, the silent burning kind that slide down his blood-red cheeks like hot wax down a candle. It's hard to breathe. The vicinity blurs into dark splotches of color, like when you walk into a cage and the last thread of light slips away, leaving you alone in a total darkness, and your eyes cannot adjust, so your brain makes things up, like moving shadows, shrieks, and a false feeling of touch. Hold up. There is something that's touching his back. Denki freezes altogether, rapidly blinking away the salty tears that blur his eyesight. At first, he can't catch up. Only his chest is rising and falling with each tremulous breath. The corridor falls into stillness, until the warmness from the palm that's resting on his back forces his senses to coordinate with the present. Gold eyes dart over his shoulder, until he spots a blurry figure. The first thing to get a solid outline is a rock-shaped head, which is unevenly shaped and pointed at the top, and a square-shaped strong jaw. His brain refuses to distinguish who it is for a few seconds. When it hits him, he exhales loudly, color draining from his face. Shit, chants his mind. the horror biting at every cell in his entire, not-so-large being. Fuck no, go away, go away, go away. 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲? Koda's high-pitched voice never fails to make 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲 splutter, but at the moment, this is the last thing he can think about. His mind is racing million km/h with anxiety maneuvering the steering wheel. Still, somehow, barely, he manages to tag the fakest smile anybody has ever seen on him since forever and speak up. The bigger teen digs holes in him with those tiny, round, black spheres, examining every atom floating in 𝐭𝐚𝐲's existence. Are you okay? His voice isn't louder than a whisper, and God 𝐭𝐚𝐲 wishes he just has spoken with sign language as usual. His breath seems to stutter in his lungs before he lets it go. 𝗵𝘃𝗄. Koda doesn't seem to be convinced. What happened? 𝐭𝐚𝐲 can practically sense the struggle of speaking, all of the shyness his classmates usually drown in threatening to win. Yet, he tries his best, for a useless bum that can't get his legs to work. He chokes out, clenching tight fists, until his knuckles turn white. His brain draws a blank as he gazes at the other teen, words stuck like balls of fur in his throat. Help me stand up, please. He's extremely glad Koda doesn't question anything. Simply wraps his arms around his quivering, lithe figure, and pulls to stand. 𝐭𝐚𝐲 clenches to his classmate as if his life depends on it, while trying to push all of his weight against his feet. Nothing. Fuck. Squeezing shut his eyes, he forces himself to take deep breaths, just the way 𝐈𝐧𝐭𝐝 teaches them when they're about to panic. He can't use the trick with his quirk in front of Koda. This scene is humiliating more than enough. No need to show the boy what's been going on with him in the past few days. Can you escort me to my room? Koda nods. An expression of concern flashes through his eyes. Silently, Denki lets Koji drag him the short distance from the place he collapsed to his room. A trembling hand pushes the door, and he points to his body, swallowing down the ignominy gnawing at his exhausted bones. The moment his body hits the mattress, he turns sharply to face the troubled teen, who fidgets with his thick fingers. His crooked mouth opens, closes, uncertainty gleams in his eyes, and he gulps, his Adam's apple visibly bobbing. The look of a person waiting for an explanation that 𝐭𝐚𝐲 refuses to give. They stare at each other as thick silence crashes from above. The sharpest blade known to mankind will break like a straw in an attempt to cut the tension forming between them, as 𝐭𝐚𝐲 inhales deeply, flipping for the easiest solution that will leave the least damage. It's hard for him to think of something good when he's calm, so when he's on the verge of having a panic attack, the familiar sensation of hungry electricity boils in his stomach as he glares daggers in the silent teen. The quivering of his right arm shakes his nerves, no matter how hard he tries to ignore it. The pressure in the air drops as electrical tension forms around his forehead, shooting tiny arrows of pain into his scalp. And suddenly it strikes him. Muffles Koda, biting on his lip. Can I help you somehow? What's going on? He stutters. So badly 𝐭𝐚𝐲 thinks he's facing the angel of death and not him. Why, yeah, you can help. His voice echoes distantly in his ears as he leans a bit forward, bend over for a sec, albeit cautiously. But Koda leans in, until he's forearm length away. And then, Denki throws his arm with his fingers splayed and strings of electricity dancing among them, slapping Koda's forehead without a warning. He wakes up with a terrible headache. It's as if someone takes his brain and mashes it into a mix of bloody cocktails, letting it drip to the floor and dissolve into atoms. Similar to the feeling when a basketball ball hits your face, or when you bang your head against the floor so hard that you see strats and cannot walk straight. Ironically, both of the incidents occurred in real life. They had a crunches test, sometime at the beginning of their school year, when they were amateur kids that tried assiduously to impress 𝐈𝐧𝐭𝐝. Not that they don't do their best now, but back then, they were terrified from each and every failure, unaccepting the tiniest mistakes. 𝐈𝐧𝐭𝐝 told them to do 60 crunches in less than a minute. To get a 100 points, they needed to do it in 45 seconds. Those who took longer than a minute were going to get more exercise on core strength, topped by a few laps around the school. So 𝐭𝐚𝐲 did 60 crunches in 45 seconds without ado, mostly. That's the easy part. However, being the human disaster he is, he managed to bang his head so hard on the last one that Kirishima had to carry him out of the sports hall because the world danced each step he took. And about the basketball ball? Well, they had a match. He leapt to block 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗄 from reaching over to strike their team a point, and instead of backing away like a normal human being would have been expected to, the feral gremlin shoved the ball into his face at the force of a bowling ball hitting the pins. His nose bled for an hour before Recovery Girl got back from wherever she was and took care of him. A remarkable experience. Sadly, this time, the headache doesn't fade away as time passes by. It continues following him after he accidentally falls asleep and wakes up 2 hours later, with his throat drier than the desert and stomach painfully pressing against the hollow gap of void that's supposed to be filled with food. Food is energy. Denki needs to eat. Slowly, he pushes himself with his arms, groaning at the way his muscles protest to the demands of his sleep-coated brain. His body feels like cotton, and his legs. Cautiously, he reaches out and taps his fingertips against his thighs. A distant sensation blooms from the cold skin to his digits, but the rest is still numb. Denki bites on his lower lip. No food for him for the next god knows how much hours. Great. Denki grimaces. Fuck it. He throws himself back, hitting the soft mattress with his back and pulling down the sweatpants he wears. Without looking, because this way it's less scary, he slams his palms against his thighs and shoots a potent shock through his nerves. Nothing. Arg. The shriek is muffled by the crackling electricity as he forces more voltage into his thighs, until they start to steam and the scent of burning flesh coats the room. The tickling feeling from the electrification builds in slow waves at the tip of fingers, and suddenly a tsunami of conflagrating pain sears through his leg. Gold eyes flicker wide open from the unexpected amount of pain. His back arches, saliva spits out of his parted lips, and a scream emerges from his throat. The room paints in white as his eyes roll into their sockets. The electricity grasps into every neuron of his strained body and shakes it to the point it's ready to explode. His voice dies in his mouth after emitting the first sound, body slumping onto the bed like a lifeless log, as his arms finally let go. Smoke seeps from his thighs. He breathes heavily. The whine is hoarse, so quiet that it's almost inaudible. Saliva drips down his chin. His throat is sore and dry. Denki curls his fingers. He can feel the friction of skin to skin, and a wobbly smile stretches on his lips. The sensation in his legs is back. It worked. Someone could have heard him screaming. On that moment, the terror strikes again. His eyes widen, and he bolts into a sitting position. Wiping away drool, he hurries to stumble out of his bed, ignoring the fact his legs almost fold underneath him and rushing to the door. His hand misses the doorknob and his forehead slams against it. A whine tips his throat as he readjusts the position and pushes the door open. The other hand rests at the pounding place as he peers into the hallway, and a very loud sigh falls out of his mouth when he realizes no one is here. Shit. Dropping to his knees, Denki pinches the bridge of his nose. Gotta be more careful. When he finally makes his way down, the hour is early noon. Most of his classmates are out, shopping, traveling the city, enjoying themselves. It's good, means that less questioning eyes and less explanation to give. He shakes his head to clear the fog in his mind, forcing himself to push away the tangles of pain zapping through his thighs. There are burn marks all over them, and he's not sure how he's supposed to treat them. Asking Recovery Girl is going to require explanations he wants to avoid. The same goes to the rest of his classmates, and that's without mentioning Aizawa. That's why he decides on the best course of action, ignoring the problem until it disappears. Upon crossing the common room, he notices Tokoyami, Shoji, Koda, and Aoyama sitting, watching a movie. It's some action movie with a lot of CGI and glowing effects that make his head hurt, so he averts his gaze, fishing his phone out of the pocket of the new sweatpants he wears. However, he regrets walking there a moment later when a silent groan lashes against his eardrums. Are you alright? Tokoyami speaks, and for a moment Kaminari tenses, thinking the bird teen addresses him, when he realizes that he is, in fact, looking at Koda. The larger teen is almost curled into a tiny ball completely. His head rests on the back of the sofa. No answer is head, just soft vibrations of hand motions cutting the air. Tokoyami lets out a soft hum in response. Did you take aspirin or something? Again, no sound-accompanied answer, but a highly concerned response from Aoyama this time. I can bring you something. How badly does your head hurt? An ice cube forms in 𝗵𝗲 stomach as memories from yesterday slam against his skull. The phone almost slips out of his hand as the whole room does a flip, and if he hadn't reached out the kitchen table and leaned against it, he would have lost his balance and fallen. He electrified 𝗏𝗏 yesterday. After the teen went out of his way to help his retarded ass, he, for some reason, thought that it was morally acceptable to use his quirk against him and cause him a short-term amnesia. Well, it isn't really it. More like just forcing his brain to erase the memories from yesterday, and hopefully he didn't accidentally make him forget another thing. Still, nausea curls in his throat just from the thought of his anti-heroic actions as he breathes out shakily, his appetite vanishing as if never existing. 𝐒𝐽iMA passes by him, pacing casually to the med drawer without sparing him a second glance. Watching the blonde taking out a pill and filling a glass of water for the suffering classmate makes his urge to puke stronger, as the understanding how terribly he acted seeps into his flesh. It clenches into it like an agitated wolf that's ripping its prey with sharp pangs. The hairs of his body stand against his skeleton, and breathing once again seems like an impossible task. Guilt. That's the only thing he can focus on. So Denki spins on his heels and leaps out of the kitchen, escaping before he starts crying. This is your last chance to pull up your grades, 𝐈𝐧𝐿 starts, glaring tiredly at his class. 2 more weeks to go, before we're going to the spring break, and you'll be back to your second year. The class cheers loudly, some even whistle as they throw their hands to the air. Yet, the man continues before it can escalate into a louder cacophony. You cannot slack off. Most certainly we're going to take you to a camp, but we don't have dates, so stay tuned. For now, I want you to focus on the last wave of exams you're going to have next week. Those who fail those tests are going to attend spring courses. Each subject you fail will have a different course, and if you want, you can stay at the dorms during the week and get back to your houses on the weekends. It is for your consideration. A lazy toothy smirk curls at the sides of his mouth. But I suggest you do not fail. 𝗵𝗲 swears 𝐈𝐧𝐿's gaze lingers on him for a second too long. Even if it makes his stomach flip, he doesn't pay any attention to it, simply digesting the information given by their teacher. Attending school during a break is awful. He doesn't want to be forced to do so. But obviously, he's going to fail. Doesn't matter how hard he's going to try and study for those finals, he's going to see low marks and disapproving looks from the teacher. English and literature are the only subject he hopes that he won't be in need to take extra lessons for. Still, it's frustrating. Letting his head drop to the table, he squints at the side, eyes focusing on the smart kids of their class. Momo, Shoto, Katsuki Izukutenya, all of them don't look that anxious upon hearing it. Even Mineta grins casually, knowing damn well his grades are high enough to pass perfectly fine. Well, at least he can state for sure that Kirishima, Ashido, Siro, Uraraka, and 𝗬𝗓iMA have equal chances to fail. The thought hangs in his mind for a short second before letting go, dissolving into regret. They have done nothing wrong. They don't deserve this line of thoughts. It's all his fault that he's stupid, miserable. Perhaps it's the guilt speaking. We're also going to have a practical test, informs 𝐈𝐧𝐿, and half of the class gasp ecstatically in response. It's going to be with 1B and your new hero course student, Shinso Hitoshi. I hope you still remember him. Of course we do. Hollers Kirishima, throwing a fist to the air. A cool bro. Again that useless mindfucker? Katsuki grouches from his seat, crimson eyes 2 wicked slots in pure contrast to Izuka's ecstatic bouncing on the screeching chair while throwing a triumphant fist ceiling-ward. 𝗵𝗲 furrows his brows. Lately he has been stumbling across the purple head quite a lot, mostly making an utter fool out of himself while trying to impress him, or with the recent development, until he successfully knots a thread of friendship. Because it's his nature, he can't stand and watch lonely wolves without getting on their nerves. Perhaps that's why he's annoying. A little sigh escapes his lips as he wonders wherever Shinso hates him completely. Well, if they're going to be in the same class since next year, it's going to be a little problem. But if not, then nah, I'm still going to annoy the fuck out of him. Payback for rejecting my perfect coffee date, bitch. There's no bite behind those words, yet he chuckles. Second year hopefully means a new beginning. Maybe they will be able to start a blank page. That is, if he doesn't accidentally kill himself until then. Denki bites anxiously on his lip as he stares at Recovery Girl. The old lady arranges paper on the table of her office, expression blank. It's neither the wrinkled, kind smile he's used to seeing, nor the miffed frown. This look is unreadable and sends shivers down his spine. "How are you feeling, Kaminari-kun?" she asks, fishing out a paper. He cannot see what's written there, and that doesn't help to suit the way his heart is rattling in his chest like a rock in a box. He pauses, then shrugs plainly. "I'm fine." "You seem tired." Her small eyes scan him up and down, making him shrink in his place. "Have you been sleeping and eating well?" "I've been doing okay," he mumbles, tremor-struck fingers fiddling anxiously with the hem of his shirt. Aizawa's announcement from yesterday threw him into a loop of anxiety that prevented him from sleeping properly, and the guilt from electrifying Koda still sits heavily in his chest. So saying that he's okay is the best way to describe the myriad of unexplainable emotions pumping inside of him. "Did you experience any type of fatigue lately?" The old lady continues solemnly, which makes him swallow in discomfort at the prying queries. "No, and not really," Denki says carefully after recalling the last days. The exams lurch around the corner. Obviously he's going to look on the verge of fainting when he has to stay up late and cram until his brain squeezes out of his ears. Recovery Girl hums, for a moment gazing down at the pile of papers in her hands. Her mouth opens, then closes, as if she's unsure what to say now. It doesn't last long, and before he has any chance to squeeze a word, she speaks again. "Your results from the Quirk test are a bit concerning. I'm not going to lie." Denki flinches at it, his heart throbbing in his chest as a layer of sweat coats his palms. "Looks like it has been overused lately. Did you do any extra training?" "Well, yeah," he nods, so glad that he has been training more lately, and isn't forced to lie to her. Zapping himself purposely to block out pain and emotions, or rather, getting his sensation back to place, isn't a good answer. "Gotta train my quirk, after all." A shaky chuckle that does more harm rather than helping him, if Recovery Girl's unreadable expression is anything to go by. "I see," yet her eyes hint at nothing but persuasion. "What do you think the problem is, then?" Denki tenses. This isn't a question that he's supposed to get asked. Previously, Recovery Girl just told them what was written and gave them some tips on how not to hurt themselves, as well as medication for those in need. Why is she asking him that? Is she suspecting something? Nervously, he shifts his way back on the chair, trying to not let the swirl of thoughts take over his on-the-verge-of-panic brain. Maybe I need to take some yoga lessons?" Inner peace and such, he attempts to joke, to finger-gun his way out of trouble, but it doesn't seem to be working. "Please answer my question seriously, Kaminari. Your health isn't a joke, my boy. As a future pro-hero, you need to understand that those checks are done for you, to recognize any abnormal phenomena in your body that might risk you in the future." "What future?" His legs have been already paralyzed, and he zaps himself to stop panicking. The future she mentions is happening right now, and if he was smart, he would have brought it up. Instead, a sweet smile tugs at his cherry-red lips as he nods in agreement. "Fake it until you make it, right?" "Yes, I'm sorry. What I mean is, maybe I need to train my quirk more. I already go as frequently as I can over my wattage limit for that purpose, so perhaps I should add training on quirk control, so that I can maneuver it better inside of me." The frown on her face stiffens. "Inside of you," she repeats after him, and for some reason, something in his stomach drops. A metallic taste spreads in his mouth as he tries to swallow, feeling as if somehow messed up. "We're going to go over your results now, together," she eyes him. Any threads of her usual cheerfulness and sweetness are swept away by piercing worry. "And see how we can help you to get a better hold of it. But firstly, let me ask you one more thing. Okay?" Denki shakes himself off mentally. There's absolutely no reason for him to be so anxious, right? Recovery Girl knows nothing. The results are probably showing some more electrical static within his system or whatever, so no real reason to constantly worry about them finding out about the glitches of his quirk. "Sure, ask away. Why did you conceal information about your quirk condition?" Quirk deficit disorder, QDD, is a neurological disorder that causes distortion and problems handling the behavior of one's quirk. Denki bounces on the stool, tiny fingers fiddling with a rubber ball. Its color is dark, mystical purple that reminds him of knights and great warriors, of heroes. He knows that usually boys dislike those girly colors, but always found something rather appealing in it. It's just pleasing to look at, comforting, and gives the vibe of pureness. Once Denki learned that yellow and purple are complementary colors, he has been telling everyone that his significant other is going to have purple hair, or eyes, or skin. He's not picky. Perhaps that's partly the reason why he enjoys playing with Mari's hair so much. A warm hand glides down his head and he looks up at his mother. There's a terrified expression on her face, the same way she looks when his Quirk is acting funny, or when her fights with his dad get slightly out of hand. All in all, it's an unpleasant look that Denki despises with his entire being, so he pulls at her shirt until she glances down at him. 𝐿𝐴𝐺𝐻? She hums, her voice cracks. Then, she suddenly picks him up from the stool he's sitting, placing on her thighs. Two slim arms hook protectively around his tiny frame, as if the woman tries to hide him. Denki blinks slowly at the doctor in front of them. It's rare and usually conveyed genetically, however. There is a treatment for that. A breath rumbles in the woman's chest, blowing on 𝐭𝐼𝐺𝐼's head. The little boy tilts his head, unable to understand what they are talking about. And still, he understands that there's something wrong with him, and that makes his stomach sick. He squeezes the ball. How hard is it to treat it? The black-haired man takes off his glasses and rubs his face, then brings his elbows down to the table, leaning on them and lacing his long, thin fingers together. There's an eerie silence, enveloping the room in a snowy blanket. Denki huddles into his mother. The woman tightens the hold. Medicine, finally says, but his voice holds something Denki can't quite put his finger on. As long as it's in the first stages, medicine should be enough. First stages? The doctor clears his throat, eyes not leaving the two crumpled figures in front of him. Like cancer, I would say. If you can catch it before it gets worse, there's a great possibility for it to be eliminated, for the most part. Although, as every illness there is, we cannot promise full recovery. It might worsen with years, but with the right treatment, I think it should be fine. A lump of tears chokes on his throat. He doesn't understand a single word. Well, almost. Medicine. Treatment. Recovery. Nothing else makes sense in his little head. Yet those three words are more than enough to shake up his world, practically ruin everything he has ever believed in. Is it some kind of tumor? No. Perhaps if it was, we could have offered a better option, but it's something to do with the Quirk system, and that's the second biggest mystery of the human body, right after the brain. Denki lets out a muffled squawk as the woman squeezes the oxygen out of his lungs. How much is the medication going to cost? A number is thrown into the air. 𝐭𝐼𝐺 doesn't understand the value of it, but judging by the way every muscle in his mom's body tenses, it's a lot. Still, he can't really digest the information completely. All he knows is that his mom is upset, that it's because of him, and that he wants to cry. Dad? The tired man looks up from his laptop. Mustard-colored eyes rest on the tiny boy approaching him. A little smile forms on his lips as he sets the device aside, letting Denki climb up the couch and curl into his father's side. What is it? His voice is soft even if the exhaustion spills out of him in rivers. His touch is loving and warm, even if he's mentally burnt out. Whatever it means, Denki isn't sure. All he knows is that he vented about it to his grandmother the other day over the phone, and that it's something bad. Maybe one of his books can teach him what it means to be mentally burned out. And the moment he learns what it is, he'll make sure to do everything he can to promise his father's soundness. When will Mom be back? Asks in a tiny voice, directing his big, innocent gold eyes to look at the man. His smile wavers. Denki swears it does. Mom is doing an important job, Den. He closes the book over his finger like a bookmark, his other hand stroking Denki's messy locks. She's helping people out by chasing villains and saving the world. Denki tilts his head in childish, naive curiosity. The whole world? Mr. 𝐭𝐼𝐺 chuckles. Well, maybe not the whole world, but every person is a world of their own. Or so I believe, at least. Even if you can save one person, it means you saved someone's world, he says poetically. Mr. 𝐭𝐼𝐺 is a writer. Your neighborhood celebrity that people wave at while he's taking Denki to school, always willing to shower Tam Man in compliments for his breathtaking descriptions and marvelous world building. Someday, Denki is going to read all of his father's books, But for now, he will just beam at the people while his father sheepishly thanks them and then beg for another story at bedtime in the privacy of his room. Then instead of waiting for Mom, Denki determinedly crosses his fingers, pitching his short arms forward. I'm going to support her. Support, den 𝗬𝗵𝗲. Denki blinks. 𝗬𝗵𝗲. All he receives is a bitter chuckle and a chaste kiss on the top of his head. You're already doing great, little hero. Fuck. There's no point denying it. I requested your medical file and went over it with Aizawa yesterday. As we saw, you've had a long way since the manifestation of your quirk. Since the beginning you struggled to make it work, or as it's called in your file, 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲's tiny spheres dip into 𝗵𝗲 skin, tearing his flesh apart solely by looking at him. You suffer from quirk deficit disorder. The room spins for a moment as his feet turn icy cold, and suddenly he wants to nosedive out of the window. His fingers curl on his pants and he breathes out shakily, shuddering under her mighty glare. Brilliantly stutters. Her eyebrows slope downwards into a serious frown, a mix of disappointment and worry he's not ready to face. Now nor ever. There's an unreadable story behind her expression, which makes him twice as anxious. He gulps forcefully, feeling shivers stabbing his limbs and back like arrows spearing the dartboard. In those moments he feels more useless than appendicitis. They're silent for long enough to question wherever they're breathing or not. The temperature drops for at least 10 degrees lower than the zero, and the white walls of the clinic are suddenly bigger. They are closing on him as everything in his eyesight blurs out, toying with his mind that the room gets smaller and smaller. The first instinct is to run. Gripping with his hands at the chair, he breathes in shakily. Sweat trickles down his forehead. It's hard to breathe. He can't do that. I need to run. His legs are frozen, as if again paralyzed, and something is buzzing in his ears. Electricity. Goosebumps form on his arms as he attempts to focus on the old lady in front of him. Her lips are moving, yet he's unable to distinguish the sounds she makes into words that support logic. Nothing feels real as he leans slightly forward, accepting the familiar sensation of electrical flow in his body. Sorry, he squeezes out of himself. What was that? Recovery girl frowns. I said, QDD is treated similarly to ADHD. It's rather new to humanity, but I believe that we would have been able to handle it, hadn't you concealed it. Not to mention that by doing it you violated the law of 𝗬𝗏𝗄. When signing up the papers, you had to waive of your medical confidentiality. He knows that. That's exactly why he made a copy ahead of time, faked his mother's writing and handed you 𝗬𝗏 forgery. But she doesn't need to know that. I'm sorry, is what his last viable brain cell supplies him with. Am I? And suddenly tremor wraps around his brain as he realizes where this conversation is heading to. His face grows 3 shades paler as he breathes out, shakily, am I going to be expelled? The anxiety bites into his brain as his vision turns dark for a moment. What's up with the lack of response? She has heard him loud and clear. Why isn't she answering? A lump of tears forms in his throat as his heart starts to box furiously against his ribs, wanting to lurch out of his chest and beat the shit out of. No. The exhale he lets out is loud enough to assume he has been holding his breath for years. As if his body was frozen for a century and finally he's out of the sun, breathing out for the first time after sleeping in the frozen death for so long. However, what you did is grievous. Aizawa has yet to decide what to do, but this one is up to him. Regardless, my job is to take care of the mess you turned yourself into, 𝗵𝗲. Her words sting, right in his core. He can feel each and one of them pierced into his skin, and frankly, he wants to cry, like the little pathetic kid that's beaten up by bullies. Because he cannot defend himself. Exactly those fat, ugly tears of shame and dolor, because he's such a loser. A useless human being wasting oxygen that should. 𝗵𝗲, please look at me. Something wet drips down his cheek. Her face features visibly soften as she leans on her elbows. Her tiny frame is the only thing his haggard mind can focus on. Even the warm water leaking from his eyes down his round, reddish cheeks isn't something he bothers to pay attention to. A shuddered inhale. A sharp pain in his chest. A scream forming in the pit of his stomach. Loud, agitated, aggravated by the kind look the old lady wears because he doesn't deserve it. Doesn't deserve any of it. His parents' worry, recovery girl's time, 𝐈𝐧𝐿's concern, his classmates' care. None of it is something 𝗵𝗲 should take, yet he does, like a greedy bastard that doesn't know his place in this dark world. There's only one solution to that, and he's not afraid to state it. Yet, before the thought finishes brewing in his mind, 𝗧𝗵𝗲's gentle voice grounds his mind back to reality. I'm here to help. Why? A great question. Lo and behold, this simple line strikes him like a lightning bolt, as plumper tears begun flowing down his face. Like rivers during a cataclysm, that receive more water than their place in the ground can contain, and it all splashes in wild waves. Water wolves that howl under the moon, sowing chaos. And this is how he ends up sobbing, covering his ugly facial spasm with shaky, scarred hands. Productivity is the key to success, says literally every damn soul in the world. However, in the past 2 hours, 𝗵𝗲 has been lying in his bed and staring absently at the ceiling. With one hand he's tossing the packet of his new pills, up and down, and the other is folded behind his head, as he chews on his lower lip. The session with Recovery Girl was ridiculously helpful. From the moment he steps out of the door, he feels light in his chest, as if someone takes out all of his bones, veins, skin, organs, and there's nothing left there but warmness, spreading calmness inside of him. Crying also helped a bit. He even has a new friend out of this. Though, it's also the Achilles heel that makes him uncomfortable and uncertain. Frowning at said new friend, 𝗵𝗲 angles it in front of his face in a 45 degrees, looking at the pack of pills somewhat skeptically. It's barrel-shaped, with a rough lid that he enjoys rubbing his fingertip against. The sensation of something solid against his almost senseless skin is comforting. Maybe that's why. Or it's his ADHD brain that demands constant fidgeting of his hands, which is the reason why Ajuru's tail has been suffering since day one. He flips it in his hand once again, sniffing while staring at the letters written there, not really reading them but pretending to. Recovery Girl said this is for him. Somehow from the conversation they had that took 3 hours, dear God, poor lady, she shouldn't waste so much precious time on him. She concluded he needs to get back to his pills, and they will see from there. It's not that easy, though. The first stage of QDD requires deduction of the quirk functioning, so that it'll be easier to start the therapy, if needed. I spoke with an expert before giving you those. You need to take them for 2 months. Your quirk should get back to its normal rate, she tells him while pushing the box, which feels as if she's shoving a gun to his face. After that, we're going to put you on lower dose. That will maintain it in check for the near future. I want you to get better, 𝗵𝗲, so please promise me you're going to take it seriously. Of course he's going to take it seriously. It's no better than ADHD if looking at it objectively, and should be treated as solemnly. Generally, quirk diseases are dangerous. Frivolity in this subject can and will lead to unnecessary deaths. There are numerous diseases other than QDD, such as chronic quirk distortion, quirk flu, etc., and on the spectrum, QDD is that one illness that isn't verily deadly, yet can aggravate to the point of hospitalization and severe damage. Unintentionally, he reaches out to ruffle his hair, as if checking that it's still in place. A little sigh escapes his lips as he rolls over his side, ducking his head into the pillow. Getting through this hell again isn't something he's willing to do, not when he's determined to finish high school and be a successful pro hero like his mother. Shivers run down his spine as he tugs at a blonde lock. The condition was at its worst state when he was 11. He missed half of the school year due to being hospitalized, therapy and treatment included. The treatment itself lasted for 2 months or so, but it took a while before he was released, before his state was approximately stable for him to continue living as a normal kid. Not that he has ever lived like a normal kid. How can he? Being born with a quirk defect ruins your life. It's not enough that he suffers from ADHD, also due to his quirk messing up with his nerves. He just has to be permanently ill, isn't he? The only comfort in this mess is the fact that he can and will be a hero. Illness damned. 𝗵𝗲 groans. As much as he appreciates Recovery Girl's efforts, she really shouldn't. He doesn't deserve it, any of it, yet people seem to ignore the fact and lie to themselves that he's worthy. It could have been so much easier to just. A knock on his door. Panic strikes through him as he bolts out of his bed, rushing to push the pills away so that no one can see it and pity him, and slides over the door, Coming! He calls out, yanking the door with such force that it almost hits him in the face. At the last second, he darts back, avoiding the collision, and blinking away the momentary dizziness from all of these sharp movements. When his last functioning brain cells align with the situation, he gapes stupidly, looking in confusion at the ash blonde standing in front of him. The Holy Mother of the Scowls is sitting proudly on his face, showing off its glory and devilish beauty. His hands are tucked in his pockets, and his nose slightly wrinkled, as if he's a bull ready to lurch at 𝐿𝐼𝐺𝐼. Well, at least he doesn't wear a red shirt. 𝐿𝐼𝐺𝐼 doesn't really wear red anyway. Can I help you, buddy? Asks casually with a light smile, despite being emotionally wrecked and socially drained in the past few days. Move, growls 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗀, power walking through him. His shoulder bumps against 𝐿𝐼𝐺𝐼's, not subtly by any means, and 𝐿𝐼𝐺𝐼 had to hold back a grumble that will earn an explosion into his face. Though, after being friends with 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗀 for a few months, he has learned that sometimes it's better to not question him. As much as it's entertaining to tease him, especially because it's 𝐿𝐼𝐺𝐼's specialty to annoy people and splendidly ignore the fact they want his head under the guillotine. He, as stated earlier, is as emotionally parched as a dead lizard under the desert sun. So he just sighs and closes the door instead. What brought you here, bro? He asks again, walking over his bed and crushes on it. 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗀 takes a seat on his chair, legs spread wide apart as he watches him. 𝐿𝐼𝐺𝐼 can't help but squirm under the intense gaze, wondering if he's going to get murdered by #1 asshole of the universe, or will he leave to see the other day. Shitty hair said you went to talk to the kissing granny. Katsuki almost spits the words, quirking an eyebrow at him. But you never told us how it was. So, 𝐒𝐽𝐽. Quit the bullshit, dunce face. Denki feels as if God just slapped his face. The attempt to swallow fails and he almost chokes on his saliva, starting a coughing fit that makes his eyes burn. When it calms down, he takes a few rapid breaths, feeling as if Katsuki's eyes are weighing down on his entire existence. Despite 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗀 saying nothing, 𝐿𝐼𝐺𝐼 can easily guess what the ash blonde is here for. Of course, out of the entire class, 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗀 is the one to corner him. But why? Why does he care? 𝐿𝐼𝐺𝐼 is just. It's annoying, Katsuki adds after a disturbing minute of silence. I mean, you've been more annoying than usual. Denki flinches, averting his gaze to look at the floor. He presses his fingers against his thighs, as if trying to make the fabric of his sweatpants melt so that he can feel his warm skin underneath. A part of him feels that he's ready to panic. Scratch that. The panic is already brewing in his stomach, a hot mess of electric fire circulating under his skin. It buzzes lightly in his ears, like tiny bees of white and yellow. His throat is tight. There's ice in his lungs. Sorry, is what falls between his legs. Not that he's sure what he's apologizing for. It's just, Katsuki has this effect on people, making them apologize without a reason. Really? Dumbass. Katsuki breathes out slowly, as if he's about to explain to a kid for the umpteenth time why he cannot do that certain thing that the kid is, in fact, already doing. The same way any teacher will look at 𝐿𝐼𝐺𝐼 after they have wasted hours on figuring out with him to solve a problem, solely for him to fail the exact same question a few hours later. God. It's ironic. And frustrating. And maybe he wants to cry again, as it dawns on him that 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗀 is actually worried. Even if his ways of expressing it are questionable, overwhelming at times, you have to have a special talent to make one of the biggest egoists in the entire universe actually worried about you. People all over the world climb mountains, drawing better than Picasso by the age of 9, performing magnificent tasks, such as creating the entire goddamn internet. While Denki is being Denki. Nothing to add here. He almost snorts at the thought, even if it leaves a bitter taste in his mouth. A part of him wants to curl into a tiny ball and wait until 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗀 gives up and leaves him be a miserable mess on his own. The other part wants the comfort that 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗀 simply cannot give. At least cannot comfortably give. 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗀 clicks his tongue irked. Instead of fucking apologizing, maybe you want to tell me the fuck she wanted? Did she even help you? How are you going to pass the upcoming physical test if you can't get a hold of your fucking? Why do you fucking care? 𝐿𝐼𝐺𝐼 doesn't mean to snap. He also never meant to end in this situation. Yet here we are. Something in 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗀's expression shifts, his brows furrow on his forehead, 'Cause you're mopping the whole damn day and it's annoying. Then just fucking ignore me. You were doing it just fine, spits back, feeling his throat tightening with each word he says. He isn't even sure why he's saying it. 𝗏𝗃𝐻 did nothing wrong. It's all his fault that he's such a klutz. Can't do anything right. Fails the simplest tasks. Cannot stay focused without pills. Cannot control his quirk without pills. Every part of him is messed up, is wrong. Nothing he has he deserves, and the familiar feeling behind his eyes, as if a hook catches the sides of his eyeballs the same way it catches fish, and a fisher pulls it, hard and strong, occupies the area of his face. He tries to ignore it, to stay in the character, to challenge 𝗏𝗃𝐻 with an equal frown. No idea if he manages, though. How can I fucking ignore you when shitty hair, rackin' eyes, and soy sauce are talking non-stop about you being sad? At that moment, Kaminari isn't sure what surprises him more. The fact that 𝗏𝗃𝐻 has yet yelled at him, even once, though his voice is trembling, he's probably on the verge of snapping, or the fact that his friends are worried. To the point they're actually talking about it? Denki blinks, swallowing a thick chunk of nerves that's resting in the middle of his throat. It clashes with the lump of tears he fights back, as he gazes dumbly at 𝗏𝗃𝐻. I'm not sad. Even I can tell that you are, chides the ash blonde, crossing his arms over his chest. Listen, idiot. I don't care what's the deal with your quirk, but I can't stand your moping fuckface. Denki is about to argue again, but he's faster. If I gave you one-on-one lessons before the exams, will you stop making everyone else around you sad? The question makes him choke again, and his eyes round like two big, yellow pumpkins. For a moment he's unable to do anything but to gawk at his explosive friend, slowly digesting the words. Are you joking? He's hesitant, uncertain, as if at any moment 𝗏𝗃𝐻 might flip him off and march out of his room, laughing evilly. No, you brainless bum. 𝗏𝗃𝐻 is an asshole, but not that much. Maybe the old him would, but not the 𝗏𝗃𝐻 that's almost a year into the hero course, snarks a little voice in his head, the same one that makes him want to puke at his own existence. Do I look like I'm fucking joking? An eyebrow is raised in his direction. You're going to be a hero for fuck's sake. Not as good as me, obviously, but you need the minimum passing grade if you want to be somewhat accepted. So you'd better buckle up what is left in your skull and use it properly until the exams are over. There's still a lump strangling his throat, but this time, his lips slant into an awkwardly positioned half-smile. But it is earnest, genuine, and maybe a tiny bit of, well, happy too big of a word, so maybe he'd go for comforted. Yeah. Thanks, man, I appreciate it. Beaming at the other blonde and receiving an eye roll somehow eases him even more. To the point that he actually laughs, and has the urge to tease him a bit. Perhaps everything isn't as bad as it seems. Ouch. Don't fucking ouch me. Read the goddamn question again and again until you fucking understand it. Barks out 𝗏𝗃𝐻, slapping his head with a rolled notebook for the 5th or 6th time in the past hour. The evening is still young, yet Kaminari's life is already miserable. Wrinkling his nose in dissatisfaction, he glares at the math book underneath his nose, as if it's going to make the question disappear if he stares hard enough. Obviously, it does little to help, and mostly just irritates him more, so he lets his eyes wander back to the notebook he's scribbling incorrect answers in. Nothing new per se. The numbers don't make sense. In fact, nothing makes sense. The longer he looks at it, the more his head aches, and the more he wants to dump his head against the table and fucking die. I can't do that, he whines after 5 minutes. That feels like eternity. How did you pass the U.A entrance exams? Snarls 𝗏𝗃𝐻, scooping closer to observe Kaminari's notebook properly. At this vulnerable moment, Kaminari's helpful Brian notes that 𝗏𝗃𝐻 smells like burnt caramel and another fragrance he can't quite decrypt, but it's not unpleasant. To the contrary, the sweet smell somehow soothes his overloaded brain, offering him something to focus on instead of the temptation to nosedive out of the window. With some luck and a lot of nudes, he jokes, a bit bluntly, mostly trying to keep to himself the real words he's willing to say. After all, 𝗏𝗃𝐻 is right. How did he pass? And why? There are many other people who deserve his seat, and no. Denki internally shakes himself off, pushing the redundant and depressive thoughts aside. Focus on the motherfucking homework. Self-pity we do at 2 a.m. in a dark room. Huh, so that's how they let grape juice in. You just burned their fucking eyes prior, Katsuki states matter-of-factly, and Denki falters. Did he just make a joke? The Baku squad has a good effect on him, apparently. However, before he can say anything on the matter, 𝗵𝗃𝗀 taps his finger on the page. Are you an idiot? How can you write 45? Take the damn calculator and check yourself. We have it for a reason during tests. The expression his voice carries isn't mocking, but 𝗂𝐵𝐺 pouts anyway. You never use the calculator for trivial stuff like this, he whines, while grabbing the device. As he types the number, a great sensation of humiliation seeps into his bones. 𝗵𝗃𝗀 watches closely, witnessing everything. How the correct answer prints on the screen, and how 𝗂𝐵𝐺 shamefully erases the bullshit he wrote. When he's alone, he doesn't have any problem checking on the calculator how much is 2 plus 2, better safe than sorry, but with a literal genius sitting next to him. It makes him feel so. Well yeah, because my IQ is higher than most of the extras around, 𝗵𝗃𝗀 says in such a brusque tone that the ice sitting in 𝗂𝐵𝐺's stomach covers another layer. It's like getting a punch into his gut, but from a rocket, shaking all of his organs and turning him into an inside-out sushi roll. Reassuring. 𝗵𝗃𝗀 side-eyes him. 𝗂𝐵𝐺 instantly regrets being alive. He's ready to mumble something brilliant along the lines of sorry, but 𝗵𝗃𝗀 shrugs. You said you have problems with keeping numbers in your head, which is true. 𝗂𝐵𝐺 actually has this problem. His brain compulsively refuses to remember numbers in a certain order. That's why he can't calculate large numbers in his head. Hell, even something as simple as a 2-digit number plus or minus another 2-digit number takes him a few minutes, solely because he can't keep the numbers in place. It's as if they're playing tag, and he's the one who tries to catch them. Albeit, he spectacularly fails in this only task, being left alone in the void of his useless brain. Yet, it's surprising that 𝗵𝗃𝗀 remembers. Yeah, he nods sharply, sniffing. I dunno. I can't. I'm dumb. I know that. Honestly, you're just wasting your time. We're studying. Mental breakdowns later. 𝗵𝗃𝗀 taps on the notebook slightly, gingerly, refocusing on his work to emphasize the essence. 𝗂𝐵𝐺 snorts bitterly. Are you willing to listen to my mental breakdowns, Kaken? Not really. The asshole doesn't even try to mask the fact that he's not interested, and if 𝗂𝐵𝐺 wasn't used to it, it would have come out triflingly offensive. Now shut up, you have a lot of work to do. Yes, Mom. Though, his mom is the opposite of an annoying piece of shit, according to every damn soul in the world. It's quite a surprise that 𝗵𝗃𝗀 stays with him until midnight. Even a greater surprise when in the middle of their study session, the ash blonde brought them fresh cooked dinner and made 𝗂𝐵𝐺 a huge glass of hot cacao. 𝗵𝗃𝗀's brand of kindness is something to cherish, even if it can be overwhelming at times. After all, 𝗵𝗃𝗀 has changed quite a lot in the past year. People should give him more credit, he's not all that asshole. Well, at least not the bad type of asshole that deserves to be kicked in the ribs. And you know what? Perhaps it's an unpopular opinion that many people will argue with, but Denki thinks it's adorable when he cares. Even if it ends with his brain being no better than a fried pancake, as he crashes headfirst into the pillow and falls asleep. The usual tests throughout the year are terrible. But the final year tests? They are on a whole new level of terrible. So terrible that this word isn't enough to describe how horrible, atrocious the whole business is, at least for Denki. When he can barely pass the usual tests, that are 2 times smaller and has less material in them, a test with everything they have been studying throughout the entire year is worse than a villain attack. Or maybe it is a villain attack, but with the whole PTSD shit they're going through, he's going to keep the lame joke to himself. His mind is completely blank as he sits in the class, surrendered by the heavy atmosphere of tension and trepidation. It's suffocating, strangling in a way, and the only thing he wants to do is raise his hand and zap himself. One quick shock that will ease his nerves and fade the tremor wrapping around his head. It's all he needs to stay focused, to actually not freak out during the test. But he promised Recovery Girl. After the first session, she started a kind of weekly meeting with him. Yesterday was their second meeting, that she insisted on despite his attempts to dodge, telling her he has to study and such. One of the reasons he didn't really want to see her again before the tests was because he knew he would have another mental breakdown. And he, in fact, had. In the turmoil of emotions he suppressed for too long, the outburst in front of the old lady for the second time in the past month. Seriously, is someone paying her for that? She doesn't deserve handling him, goddammit. Led him to confess about the self-electrifying habit, which earned a 𝗵𝗃 so heavy that getting yelled at by Aizawa felt like a walk on the beach. In the end, she made him promise her that he's going to stop. Hurting himself isn't going to lead anywhere, and he already has problems with damaged nerves. The less he zaps himself, the better. The sad thing about it is that he knows. But sometimes, hurting yourself is better than feeling. Though he didn't say it, simply nodded at her and made the promise he already regretted. Now, objectively, she wouldn't know. At first he thought that there's no way she can discover wherever he stopped self-electrifying or not, but then he discovered that she has already contacted Aizawa about it, which means he's under a watchful eye. Damn those teachers in this damn school. Back in middle school, his teachers didn't even care about his ADHD. It was his problem, his fault for born with a defect that makes it hard to study. They said that he can handle it on his own. He can't. But he felt like he didn't have a choice. The feeling has followed him here, which makes it quite hard to believe that someone actually cares about him. Of course, his parents, but support from his family and support from the teacher facility are two entirely different things. Perhaps he's overwhelmed by the fact that Aizawa cares. Perhaps he doesn't want Recovery Girl to take his issues seriously, because it dips him the sweet honey of lies that can burst in his face at any given moment. Yet, a tiny feeling in his gut tells him that he should trust them. That's why, instead of releasing the little shock gathering at the tip of his fingers, despite being prepared, actually sensing the currents rushing through his veins and tasting metal and internet in his mouth, he squeezes his pan and swallows. The pills do their job. They won't let his quirk accidentally slip. That's why he needs to pull himself together as well. Little by little, recover from the damage that was done. It will take time and effort, he supposes, but better start now than never, right? Right. A little flame of determination ignites in his heart, stubbornly fighting against the monster of anxiety. As he receives the exam paper, furrowing his eyebrows and breathing in through his nose as he reads the first question, and instantly wants to cry. The most interesting part of it is the fact that he does end up sitting with the face of someone who has seen a ghost. It's 3 p.m. and the tests are over, concurrently to Denki's will to breathe. He cannot believe all of this study, all of this crumbing, and yet he finds himself handing the tests with shaking hands and tears pushing against the walls of gold. At least, he doesn't hand them half empty this time. What he wrote is probably a mountain of nonsense that teachers are going to laugh upon reading, but on the other hand, who will expect anything else from Kaminari Denki? That's not the worst part of it, though. The worst part is that he let 𝗵𝗃𝗀 go down. How is he going to face him later this day and tell him that he probably failed every single test today? If the ash blonde decides to turn his face into a steaming, burnt chicken, it's totally understandable and acceptable. Kaminari kicks a little stone with his shoe, puffing his cheeks as he slumps against the wall. The yard is rather empty during these hours. Some students are still writing the test. Others rest, taking the first gulps of freedom for a few weeks. It's not quite jealousy what he feels, because it's just to be expected that he's going to be forced to study during the spring break, but maybe it's a sense of frustration that he brought it upon himself. In conclusion, he's messed up. A human disaster of too many emotions, with a drugged brain that can't function without pills. Is it humiliating? A bit. Maybe. He's not sure, uncertain. Yo, drooly. Kaminari almost jumps out of his skin and sharply turns his head, spotting Jirou walking toward him. Her bag hangs around her shoulder. The trademarking bitch face rests on her face, and in her hands she carries 2 paper cups with pink straws peeking from the lid. Blinking a few times, he lets out a little breath, shaking his head. He was so busy washing himself in self-pity that he didn't hear her coming. Hi. He hates the way his voice comes out, weak, shaky, extraditing the fact that he's on the verge of crying. Since when is he such a crybaby? I was looking for you, and you didn't answer your phone, notes with a scoff, handing over him one of the cups. Questionlessly, he takes it, not bothered to check out what it is before he sips. A sweet frappe with whipped cream and some ice cream. Exactly what a morning soul needs after taking a stressful batch of exams. A little, uncontrollable smile crawls up his lips as she sits next to him on the ground, silently sipping from her own drink. Thanks, Gyro. You owe me one later, shrugs, though there's a little smile in her dark, purple eyes. Sure. After that, they fall into an effortless stillness, the only sounds being they quite sipping on the cold drink. The sweetness seeps into his blood, reminding his neurons and cells that not everything is that bad and bitter, that it's just a piece of paper. It doesn't really help, but at least the lump in his throat is gone. How are the tests? Surprisingly, she's the one to break the silence, casting a sideway glance at the blonde. Denki snorts, almost choking on the drink. Fucking awful. I have no idea how am I going to face Blasty, he's going to fucking kill me. Despite the humor he squeezes out of himself, a heavy stone sinks into his stomach, because he actually let his friend down, after all of the effort made in his favor. Hey, Gyro nudges him slightly. Not the first time you fail something, you know. A part of him wants to laugh it off, the same way he has been doing everything. Instead, when he glances down at the ground, he realizes that everything is blurry, and that, in fact, the lump in his throat is back, and it's angrier this time, because no matter how hard he tries to push it down, he can't. His mouth opens. Instead of words, an ugly whimper comes out. Alarmed, he places the paper cup on the floor and hurries to cover his face, looking away, feeling how his eyes are burning with hot tears running down his cheeks. Fuck, he chokes out, a broken whimper, biting his lips. Kaminari? Gyro sounds worried. There's a shifting from the side she sits, and a warm palm is pressed to his bicep. Sorry, he lets out, rubbing his face in a sorry attempt to push the tears back where they're coming from. It's just... A crooked smile is formed on his face as he huffs out a laugh, voice finally cracking and the water leaking down his cheek. Fuck, Sarum. This is pathetic shit. His body turns away from her, so that she can't see him. Not when he's as pathetic as a 5 years old after brushing his knee. His shoulders are shaking as he tries to muffle to sobs, eyes squeezed shut and face spasming from the myriad of emotions washing over him, like toxic waves of a wicked potion. Maybe he expects her to stand up and leave him. Anyway, he wishes for the ground to gape and gobble him down. Instead, a weight is pressed against his side. A tuft of ticklish hair rests on his quivering shoulder, and even if it's a bit awkward and tense, it's warm and acceptable. You had it rough lately, didn't you? She whispers softly. Frankly, he's not used to her sounding like that. Is she pitying him that much? Though, he's too tired to fight it at the moment. A bit, chuckles in between sobs, surrendering to the tears gushing down his flushed cheeks. Hey, it's okay to cry, he can tell that she has no idea what to say. Gyro is your tough, apathetic girl that doesn't give shit about people around her. This attempt to calm him down catches both of them off guard, he supposes. And still, they're best friends for a reason, right? I feel pathetic, he notes shakily, finally turning to gaze down on her. She lifts her head and wears a little half-smile, loosening slightly the grip around his frame. I understand this feeling. I hate crying as well. Her eyes trail down his face. He almost squirms under her gaze. Still, sometimes we just need to let it out, you know? I'm not the best shoulder to cry on, but I'm not going to judge you. The exams were fucking hard. I feel like crying myself. Pretty sure that's some others as well. And I don't think 𝗵𝗃𝗲 will be mad at you, even if you fail. He's a realistic person. Obviously, you can't suddenly score 90 in 2 weeks of studying after doing jack shit for the entire year. Ouch, huffs in a fake insult, fully aware that she's right. 𝐒𝐽𝐸 punches his shoulder playfully, then gets back to hold her drink, drawing little circles on it. This girl has a good poker face. People can't really decipher when she feels what, unlike Denki whose feelings are written all over his face usually. He should take a note from her book, or from other purple king of poker faces. Is it common to have purple hair and poker face that can freeze ice? Can it count as a genetic trait? God. I'm so stupid. In conclusion, don't beat yourself too much about it. If you fail, just try to study hard in the remedial courses. And stop moping around, you're way funnier when you're not slouching. As she speaks, she places her leg over his stretched legs, leaning against his shoulder. Kaminari wears a little smile, leaning on her from the other side, even nuzzling a bit into her hair. His brain notes that she smells like lily of the valley, a delicate white blossom, a sweet scent. Taking his own drink, he sips it again, this time trying to enjoy the taste picking at his taste buds. I also thought you'd want to chill and listen to some music. Suddenly she jerks, making him almost choke on the drink, scooping over to her backpack to fish out the phone and earphones. Warn a guy next time, grumbles with no real bite nor mock, as he clears his throat. J.Ru turns to him, raising an eyebrow and one of her earphone jacks. His heart skips a bit, a mental preparation for something painful in the eye or the ear, so it slightly catches him off guard when she gently pokes his cheek. Shut up, it's music time. Although he's grateful for her efforts to uplift his megrims, Denki still finds himself supine and wide awake the next night, nauseous from the heat boiling in his stomach and cringing from the sticky sweat beating down his forehead. Now that the written tests are nothing more but a traumatizing past fracture, the next manifestation of Satan looms over the horizon. The practical exam.